Hello everyone. Howdy, howdy, howdy. I would apologise for my lateness, but I don't negotiate with terrorists, okay? Deal with that as you will. So you're literally stuck with the same meme from yesterday. I'll be honest with you, I was tackling a much more tricky shit than I'd planned. Not that one plans such things, of course, but than I had expected. It was a delicate operation. Literally, but it, the baby was fine. What am I talking about? Anyway, yes. But I'm here now, and that's what matters most. I think that better late than literally never, or something. Trump leaves Scotland after whiskey to. Oh God, I don't want to talk about Donald Trump. He's such a cunt. He's such a pointless little cunt. Honestly, I hope he gets fucking cancer and AIDS all at once. COVID is too good for him. Single or double flush. This was for my own nostrils' sake, courtesy flush halfway through. Okay? I had to hover. I hovered. My balls dangling in the wind. Not that there was much wind, it's indoors, but as I flushed, because the stench was, honestly, overly dramatic is the only way to describe it. Anyway, what am I fucking talking about? Anyway, okay, we're gonna move off that. People might be eating, or just generally don't want to hear about my poops, whatever. Anyway. Yes. I suppose I'll do some shilling, shall I? Given that I'm late, and I definitely deserve the money, obviously. You can follow, if you're on Twitch, you can...
Stop it. Get some help.
You can do that as well, we'll get to it. If you're on Twitch, you can hit the follow button for free. You can subscribe for some amount of money. Maybe it's $5. I don't fucking know. You can subscribe with Amazon Prime for fuck all. You can gift subs to the community. You can do bits messages. 200 bits or more gets you a text to speech. You can do super chats via the Streamlabs link below. $2 or more there get you a text to speech. You can. What else can you do? I've got Patreon and PayPal you can help me out on. I've got a Discord, YouTube, Blue Sky, Internet, TikTok, and Threads. If it was pronounced that way, which it's not, but I don't care. If you're on YouTube, you can. I'm actually sober, by the way. I'm just out of it. I've got post poop tiredness. I think it's taking it out on me. You can. If you're on YouTube. You can hit the follow. No, you can't. You can subscribe for nothing. You can hit the bell icon to get notifications. You can like the stream. You can do bits messages. No, you can't. You can do super chats over there, and I'll read those out. You can become a member for 99p, which is basically no amount of money. And you can also give memberships at that equally low price. You can link your PayPal to rate my poo net. Question for the chat. Why is Kevin sober again? Is Kev's sobriety becoming a problem? Yeah, that is true. I do need to be drunk more often. This is a fact. This is a fact. Anyway, let's get on with some content. Now, before we actually get into content, I've got content for like half a show. Now, there was something else I did want to watch, but I'll probably just watch it off stream because it seems like an off stream thing. So basically, for the second sort of half of the show, it's up to you. Chat, suggest things, link me things, and I'll take a look and instantly react and judge them and decide whether any of it's worth bothering watching on stream. So why are you talking about Palestine and not Ukraine? Well, it's not an issue. That's why. It's not an issue, is it? It's not an issue. It's fine. It's not an issue. Capitalist Marxism. It's not an issue. Guessing of nasty shits, I guess we're talking about Kid Star, but we are indeed. We are indeed. Was the other thing porn? No, very much the opposite of porn. It involved people dying in accidents in football stadiums. It was about the amazing year of 1985. English football's Annus Horribilis. Yeah. Which looks pretty fucking cool. But yeah. Kevin's sobriety was sent a shockwave through the UK pub community. I don't actually drink that much. What are you talking about? Although I love the song Old Red Eyes by The Beautiful South, which is about a man who's an alcoholic. And he goes, "Old Red Eyes he died, and every landlord in the district cried." An empty bottle of whiskey laying by his side, a lazy little tear running from each eye. Amazing, absolute belter. Honestly, one of the most underrated British bands of all time, Beautiful South. Genuine, beautiful poetry, good music, pretty righteous politics as well. So, am I going to Ozzy's funeral? No, I think my invitation got lost in the post. Also, I'll be honest with you, given her recent nonsense, I would go up to his now grieving wife, his recent widow, and just be like, you're murdering babies, you fucking prick. You deserve every pain that comes to you. You literally support fucking genocide. Deal with it, cunt. Which is seen as it's a little taboo. It's a bit of a social faux pas to do that at the funeral, I think. So probably best I don't go, to be honest. Yeah. They're doing a big procession through the garbage-filled streets. I presume he's not being buried in Birmingham. I assume. I have no idea, actually, but I would assume he would be, because he's basically lived in America for
Get some help.
40 years now. He's basically an American who speaks kind of like a drunk, fucked up Brummie. So, you know. Ozzy got genocide. It's not nice now. Oh, what's that? Your husband got knackbird. He has no right of return. Send him down. God almighty. Anyway, enough. So, noises happened, didn't they? What were the noises that occurred? Thank you, everyone. We're on a hype train. If we get to level 2 of the hype train, I've already fingered basically the entire Israeli cabinet. I don't really want to finger Ozzy. You know what? I'll finger Hulk Hogan. He's a fresh
Stop
one.
it. Get some help.
He's a fresh target. Oh yeah, brother. Just that as I feel his cold puckering anus. Why don't Intel want to advertise any of my products? Why don't Windows want to give me their money? Really? McDonald's would love my content.
Stop it. Get some help.
Oh yeah, you can feel me inside you, brother. Okay. I always make him sound blacker, which I suppose is better because he was a real racist, so I think he wouldn't like that. Thank you, Big Zebra, or Big Zebra if you're American and thus wrong. Hi Vogel, yes the stripes are in fine shape. What the fuck are you talking? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Thank you, Phil Decker, with 100 bitty bits. There are a shocking number of streamers and YouTubers I follow that talk excessively about their pooping habits. We haven't got a lot going on. We're not touching that much grass, you know what I mean? Quite. Also, we're all fucking antisocial fuck-ups. Every one of us. There's the reason you get into streaming, and it's not because you're the life and soul of the fucking party. Quiet 185, thank you for resubscribing. 36 months. Get fucked, Sharon. KSO, thank you very much. Crazy hype train. I see what you've done there. You go to well. Yeah, his mental wounds might not be healing, but neither of his physical fucking wounds. You are a widow. Your husband is dead. He decided to not be alive rather than to continue being with you. Which, you know, could set the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of the social milieu of the event, you know. Again, it's one of the reasons I don't get invited to many genocide conventions of any sort, be they about life or death or otherwise. And thank you, Brad Fitton, with 46 months. Much love to you. I will happily lick any and all of you. Larry the Cat has defected to Reform because he can't stand like... No, Larry the Cat's too awesome to go with Reform. Larry the Cat at best would be a misguided Lib Dem. At best. Or at worst, I should say. Jesse Ventura unmasks Scab Hulk Hogan. Oh, well, you already knew this. He's been an anti-union guy forever. He's a piece of shit. Anyway. Yes, so, subs and all that shite. Subs and bits and that, and we can get this going. The biggest rat in Brum is in Yardley. Oh, you're talking Jess Phillips. Hello there, Bunny in the Box. We've got a Brummy in chat. I think talking about Ozzy's death is like a bat signal. It just brings the Brummies out. They come over. What are you talking about, Ozzy?
Larry the Cat made...
Yeah, it's a shame that, isn't it? Better Ozzy. Still haven't collected our fucking beans. Saw a rat the other day. Size of a fucking moon. Honestly, I thought it was a fucking cat that had been blown up with a pump. I lost one of my kids in the fucking bin pile. Yeah, but he'll turn up. He'll be alright. Plenty of fucking grub in there anyway. Anyway, I don't know why I'm doing a Brummy accent in that way. Yeah, make you sound more fucking silly. Whatever. Anyway. So. If you're wondering how things are going in the UK, not well is the answer. We talked, didn't we, very briefly, I think, in passing about the online safety bill and the fact that pornographic websites now require you to sign in. You know, you have to prove that you're over 18 and prove that you are who you say you are and all the rest of it. But it goes beyond that, right? It goes beyond just like pornographic sites. If it has any adult content at all, it's fucked, right? So I saw some people complaining. Apparently r/cider, so that would be the Reddit page for people who enjoy the fermented apple alcohol drink cider. That apparently you need to prove who you are and your ID and verify your age and all of that. You have to send them a selfie of yourself and private information to the government to get on and talk about woodpecker cider. I don't know about you. I don't think the people on the fine denizens of r/cider is really the problem. I don't think they're a real danger, if I'm honest with you. Oh. Your Discord had me age verify. Well, to be fair, that's a slightly different thing because we're a private community. And we obviously talk about adult stuff in there, so that's fine. But either way, like, I mean, I personally wouldn't give that much of a shit if they got rid of it all completely. But anyway, regardless of that, it's clearly like fucking silly. It's obviously very silly, and the use of VPNs has gone through the roof naturally. So literally, the people monitoring this must think that everyone in Britain has suddenly gone to Costa Rica or something, because no one appears to actually be using the internet from Britain anymore. It's everyone's in like Canada and fucking Tahiti. Oh god, it's so stupid. It's very, very stupid. Which led to Nigel Farage coming out against the bill, which will win him more support, obviously. And then Kevin Kyle, a government minister, saying that he's oh, for fuck's sake, Jimmy Savile. Noted, now thankfully dead, can we get some walls in chat for that? Dead mass child rapist?
Stick of poop.
That's an unfortunate piece of timing. Yeah, the pederast, the dead pederast, the deaderast, if you will. Because he was against the bill, which is like it's like when an Israeli supporter goes on about like everything being oh, you're anti-Semitic because you don't want us to kill people. You're an anti-Semite. It's like that, but with pedophilia. Fucking mad shit. And it's like, it's so mad they don't understand this. Because, like, we recently just had the revelation that the British government released the information of people who had been helping the British Armed Forces in Afghanistan to the Taliban. The very people, the Taliban, who want to murder these people, and is the reason they want to try and get to Britain in the first place, we released that information that they had given privately to the British government, we released that accidentally to the fucking Taliban who want to find and kill these people. So, I can understand people not wanting to, like, try and get on and have a fucking quick, jerk off on fucking Pornhub or whatever, and accidentally someone in Westminster fucking presses the wrong button on a keypad, and all of a sudden Al-Qaeda have got your fucking national insurance number. Do you know what I mean? There's some very, very obvious concerns with this kind of shite. So people have been getting into the old VPNs, which is an entirely predictable thing. And it's as predictable that the authoritarian scumfucks of the Labour Party oh, for fuck's sake, where are we? Have decided, well, two can play at that game. We're just going to ban VPNs then. Like, Russia doesn't ban VPNs. Like, this is some next level authoritarian shit. He's going like full fucking Kim Jong-un with this shit. Like, what's next? Are you going to build the fucking Chinese firewall? Let alone the fact that many businesses rely on VPNs. So this is a non-starter. But they're desperate to try and do it. They absolutely want to do it. Fucking idiots. And I'm glad they're focusing on this rather than, the trivial matter of the fact that the police were also engaged in the grooming of children. 13:12's in chat. I think it's definitely 12 minutes past 1 on the digital clock. I still need to get that little emote done, I think, of the 13:12 on the digital clock that beeps on and off. Anyway. Yeah. The grooming gang scandal. The grooming gang scandal, which has been rumbling on and on for many years, involved places in South Yorkshire, but not exclusively that, around the town of Rotherham and Sheffield and places like that. Turns out there was a very important reason why the police did nothing to stop these grooming gangs, and that's because they were the grooming gangs as well. The police are not useless. Because being useless would be a significant moral and actual step up for the police. The British police, and actually it's not just British police, but I will comment on them exclusively for the second. If they did nothing, if they literally didn't turn up to work and just took all of the money that we piss up the wall on these evil cunts, that would be better than what they actually do. They are racists. They are rapists, including child rapists. They do nothing to actually try and stop crime, it seems, or indeed solve any crimes. They regularly beat British people, including sometimes to death. Thankfully, they don't have guns en masse, otherwise we'd be like America. They arrest protesters, including the one we looked at yesterday, the disabled man dressed as Charlie Chaplin, who they lifted out of his mobility scooter because he had a sign that said Free Palestine. The police are scum. They just are. I don't know how you can possibly view it any other way at this point. They are the worst people in our society. Literally, look at it. They were literally also raping children. Rather than stopping the rape of children, they got involved in it. But, you know, let's ban VPNs, because that's a much more important thing. Unbelievable. By the way, just as an aside, the South Yorkshire Police Force were the police force, of course, who did the Hillsborough crimes as well. So they can add being paedophiles to the mass murder of football fans as well. Fantastic. What a lovely organisation. Really. Just spectacular work, lads. Thank you, Lord Freetus, for gifting a sub to Journeying Jordan. Mucho, mucho love. So, having led in with that piece of terrible news, I bring you possibly the weakest bit of good news ever. And I say that not because the potential that this has is unimportant, because I don't think it does, but because, as is so typical of the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, KC, who I will be exclusively referring to as I don't know, kid genocider, KC, from now on. He is the most briefcase cunt in the world. Just the most briefcase fucker that has ever existed. Because even when he does a seemingly good thing, like announcing that the UK government might recognise the state of Palestine, it is caveated with the word might, which rather detracts from the importance and historic nature of the thing. Because at least France, when France procrastinated and said, we are going to do it, but we'll do it at the UN in September, at least they gave a declarative statement, we are going to recognise the state of Palestine in September. Whereas Keir Starmer couldn't even do that. Even with the great the great awakening, if you will, the great recognising that has taken place of the Western media, where they seem to have worked out that there's a genocide going on. Crazy, isn't it? The thing that we've been saying for years, they've suddenly realised, oh, there are literally like the starving kids, skeleton children and stuff, you know, it looks like the Holocaust is happening, because it fucking is. Even with that, he's still the most useless cunt in the history of the world. Even when he's doing his too little too late desperate attempt to try and look like he's on the right side of history in some sense, even that is caveated and couched in such a way that basically he wins no support from anyone for doing it. At all. He's genuinely fucking shit.
On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas perpetrated the worst massacre in Israel's history.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Like, that's the thing he has to lead off with. That's the thing he's leading off with. The historic announcement of maybe recognising Palestine. He starts off with, oh, October 7th, Hamas. God, he's so Sabra-pilled.
Every day since then, the horror has continued. The hostages are still being held today.
I think you mean sausages.
Palestinian people have endured terrible suffering. Now, in Gaza, because of a catastrophic failure of aid, we see starving.
Time out. Time out. Is it a catastrophic failure of aid? I don't think it is, because there's lots and lots of aid there at the border, literally waiting to get in. It's not a failure of aid. The aid system has held up extremely well, actually. What it is the Israeli government purposefully starving these people to death by closing those border entry points, and therefore stopping the successfully acquired aid from getting to the people who need it. It's not a failure of aid, it's a failure of basic humanity on the part of the Israeli government. You cowardly, spineless fuck.
Starving babies, children too weak to stand, images that will stay with us for a lifetime.
See, he's just annoyed that that one kid in the photograph does have a spine. You can see it very clearly because they're emaciated. Whereas this jellyfish you see on screen, this gammon fucking blob, doesn't have one. So he's just jealous, I think.
The suffering must end. Yesterday I discussed this with President Trump, and we're...
You mean the guy who's literally doing it? The guy who's allowing all of this to happen? That guy? Oh, you talked to him? Oh, it's sorted then, clearly. Clearly the guy who's literally guilty of all of this is fine. Is there a group you cannot support as of recent? I think we need the service announcement again. Oh, about saying, or not saying, I support Palestine action. Because you can't say it. It's not allowed. It's terrorism. Stopping aid from getting into Gaza and therefore purposely starving millions of people to death, that, not terrorism. Saying I support Palestine action would be terrorism. So you won't see me doing that. You won't. The British government have got a really good moral compass. It's absolutely fine. Yeah, no. Truly super duper. Honestly, David Lammy might be the most moral person ever, I think. Yeah.
Mounting a major effort to get humanitarian supplies back in by air, and UK aid has been airdropped.
Why are you doing it by the air? There are roads. Keith, there are literally roads into Gaza. Why aren't you using those? Why aren't you going by road? Because, like, you could just do that. That would be much easier, much more effective. You could get a lot more in very quickly. Is there some sort of roadblock in place? And if so, who's put it there? What's stopping you? Why'd you have to use planes? That was not the usual method. Very inefficient. Much more dangerous. Curious. I wonder if he's got a single word of approbation. Is that the word I'm looking for? Anyway, criticism for the Israeli government in any of this. Because, look, he's saying it's really bad what's happening to the Palestinians without mentioning why this is happening to the Palestinians.
Into Gaza today, and crucially, by land. We need to see at least 500 trucks entering Gaza every day. But ultimately, the only way to bring this humanitarian crisis to an end is through a long-term settlement. So we are supporting the US, Egyptian and Qatari efforts to secure a vital ceasefire. That ceasefire must be sustainable, and it must lead to a wider peace plan.
Is it just me, or does he seem nervous? Is it just me? Maybe I'm reading too much into it, chat. Let me know. But it seems like he's kind of... It seems like he's genuinely kind of unnerved by this. Is someone wondering whether repercussions might come from this for himself? Because if you are, Keith, I imagine you're probably not going to end up at The Hague. You deserve to. You absolutely deserve to. Again, if you and Serena Wiegmann want to give up, like, home cities and swap. But I hope you are nervous. Yeah, there's a little tremble in his voice, a little breathlessness to it. Like he's not sure of himself. Now, to be fair, he's always not sure of himself because he's a fucking mindless drone. But especially now, he thinks, oh shit, history might judge me badly for saying that thing about Israel. Israel, she does have that right. Israel has a right to defend herself. When talking about them cutting off, like, water and electricity to 2 million fucking people. He's now worked out 2 years later that might not be a good look. Which does make you wonder what kind of human rights lawyer he was exactly. He doesn't seem to have the most rounded grasp of human rights law. You know. Curious.
Which we're developing with our international partners. This plan will deliver security and proper governance in Gaza. And
he is, he's genuinely, his voice is like he's about to start fucking crying. What is going on? I've never seen him like this before.
Pave the way for negotiations on a two-state solution.
You know that thing that died like fucking 30 years ago? Yeah, that thing. That thing that I'm expecting you all to take very seriously. That concept. Yeah, brilliant. Honestly, Keith, just fucking end your premiership. I nearly said a very naughty thing there. Oh, you can't catch the Kev. Probably. I don't know.
Goal remains a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state. But right now, that goal is under pressure like never before.
This is the perfect summation of how completely out of his depth he is. How completely inappropriate he is to the size and nature of his task. Keir Starmer has always been a person undeserving of his position as Prime Minister. He's always been completely not up to the task. He's always been behind the 8 ball. Literally in the sense that he's... well, not literally because he's not a pool ball, but anyway. Metaphorically. In the sense that Everyone else was saying this was a genocide so long ago, and he's still not even saying that, but he's sort of saying that without saying the actual word, because you don't say the G word. Otherwise he might find himself getting suicided in a prison where the tape is conveniently wiped for a minute or something. Who knows? Or falling out of a window, perhaps. Who fancies a cup of polonium tea? Anyway. So he's always sort of behind the curve. He's always behind the curve. And he's always doing the least he possibly can in any situation. And sometimes even less than that. In terms of the right thing to do, anyway. And this is the perfect example of this, right? The two-state solution isn't just under pressure, like it's never been before. The two-state solution is dead. It is as dead as Ozzy Osbourne's dead arse. It is as dead as Hulk Hogan. It is as dead as your chances of being re-elected in a couple of years. It doesn't exist. It's nonsense. Not only does the Gaza Strip not functionally exist as a place to live right now, all of its buildings are rubble. None of its infrastructure works at all. All of its people are being murdered. It is functionally not a place, because Israel has obliterated it. And much of the West Bank, rather than being obliterated in a literal sense, has been obliterated as Palestinian territory by disgusting settlers. People going in and stealing people's houses. Things like that. There is no two-state solution. There is absolutely no chance under the current paradigm of there ever being a two-state solution. It's liberal cope. It's absolutely disgusting liberal cope at best. And frankly, intellectual cowardice at worst. So, when I say he's not up to his task, when I say he never ever grasps the size and scale of the thing before him, this is the perfect example of it. Because I think he genuinely sort of believes a lot of it. He believes a lot of the nonsense that's put out there. Because he doesn't come up with these policies, right? He's just a suit. He's just pull the string on his back and he'll just say whatever Morgan McSweeney has programmed into his fucking voice box. That's it, right? He and Pat McFadden might as well literally have their hand up his arse, you know, doing a fucking Punch and Judy show with him, right? That's all he is. So I think he genuinely believes a lot of this shite. Some of it he knows is a lie, but I think he believes the two-state solution is possible. I think he believes the two-state solution is the thing to go for. Because he doesn't get it. He's still living in a 1990s, 1980s world where that's even a fucking plausible possibility. He's still living in the era of Camp David. He's still living in the era where people could get elected to become Prime Minister of Israel that wanted some kind of settlement. Again, the settlement was dog shit, but the point being, we now live in a situation where the person who did that was murdered by the people who are now in power. There is no two-state solution. Stop fucking lying, or stop pretending, okay? It's a falsehood, which you just don't grasp. And so you're, like I say, far, far too little, far, far too late. And with your mealy-mouthed, maybe we might recognise Palestine, maybe with a certain condition. You fucking worthless sack of shit. This is so. It's not even tinkering at the edges. He's usually, like, my criticism of him coming into office was that he was going to, at best, tinker at the edges, make minor adjustments, and maybe improve the situation a tiny little bit. And he's not even doing that now. He's now doing a caveated maybe tweaking at the edges. He's more pathetic than I thought he was going to be. And that's a really low bar, because, like, I didn't think much of him to begin with. I've despised him for a very long time. He's an obvious fraudster and a liar. And he's disappointed me even from that low expectation. Very sad to say.
I've always said that we will recognise a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution.
So, I mean, that sounds nice. I've always said we would recognise a Palestinian state as our contribution towards a lasting peace. Okay. Any add-on to that, or are you just gonna? If you just leave that statement there, that's fine. You don't need to add anything to that, because if you added anything to that, it would probably just detract from the seriousness with which you expect us to treat this.
With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank.
Amazing. Amazing. So even the historic announcement of we're going to recognise Palestine is caveated with, unless Israel does its basic, legal obligations. Like, we're trying to bully them, or not even bully them, we're trying to cajole Israel with threats of we'll recognise a Palestinian state to try and get them to hold to basic international law, their actual legal obligation. And the worst of it is, they probably won't even reach that level, right? They probably won't actually get a full thing. They'll have like some sort of temporary pause and a release of hostages and blah, 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 blah. And then they'll break the ceasefire. But it will give him just enough cover to be able to say, well, I did say if Israel meets these criteria, so we're not going to recognise Palestine. And mark my words, that is fully what I expect to take place. Because Israel does this. It'll sign up to its millionth ceasefire, its millionth peace plan, and it will break every tenet that it's agreed to. Because they're not interested in peace. They're interested in conquest. They're interested in domination and ethnic supremacy. It's fucking shoddy that this fucking piece of shit, that's all he is, he's a piece of garbage, is trotting this out as if we're supposed to be impressed, when he's not even done the bare minimum. He's not. Look, you could do it today. Just come out and say, the British government recognises the state of Palestine. You could do that right here, right now. You could have done it 2 years ago. Actually, no, you couldn't. You weren't Prime Minister. You could have done it a year ago when you became Prime Minister. You're not even doing the bare minimum. And you expect us to, what, treat you like a statesman? You're a gobshite, mate. Oh, that's true. Mixed Vivian Wolf, brilliantly put. Palestinian statehood, by the way, everyone go and follow Mixed Vivian Wolf. Palestinian statehood determined by whether or not they're allowed to live. If they all die, they can have a state. If they live, then they can't. It is a little bit like the old, witch dunking. If she drowns, it means she's holy, and therefore she was innocent and she wasn't a witch. So what's the point then? That's at best a Pyrrhic victory. Fucking hell. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Also, he's basically tacitly saying, oh yeah, they can carry on doing the genocide till at least September. At the very least September. Why is it time delayed? Is the genocide going to be less horrible for the next couple of months or what? Fucking spectacular.
Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is...
You're supposed to pronounce it Hamas. Thank you very much.
unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages.
Sausages!
Sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza. And we'll make an assessment in September on how far the parties have met these steps. But no one should have a veto over our decision.
Okay, that's interesting wording. Firstly, why would that need to be said? Why would it need to be said that no one should have a veto over our country's internal decisions? Of course, we're a sovereign government, are we not? Are you suggesting that there is some sort of undue outside pressure on the government? Are you suggesting there is an overweening outside power which is forcing the British government to act in ways it would otherwise not wish to, against potentially its own national interest, or indeed the wishes of its own people? Also, the word shouldn't, or should, whatever. No country should have a veto. So you are tacitly accepting that there is someone or something out there that does have a veto. Because you didn't say no country does have a veto over us. You said no country should have a veto over us. So I think it's rather important that the British Prime Minister clarify what he means by that. Is he suggesting that we are not entirely a sovereign nation? This would not be news to anybody. We've been America's little bitch for years. We've also been largely Israel's bitch. Well, that's sort of by proxy of being America's bitch. It's sort of a Russian nesting doll of bitchitude. Because I think it would be important from a legal standpoint and from a moral, democratic standpoint to clarify who and what has a veto over the British government. Are you not at liberty to act with freedom? If so, you need to be removed from your position, because the British Prime Minister has to be allowed to act with freedom for the interests of the nation. And clearly you are suggesting you can't do that. He's sort of saying the quiet bit out loud, isn't he?
So this is the way forward. We will keep working with all our international partners to end the suffering, get aid flooding into Gaza, and deliver a more stable future for the Middle East. Because I know that is what the British people desperately want to see. Thank you.
I think, to be fair, the British public also want to see you, like, dropped into a vat of pins quite badly. They'd quite like to see your face sandblasted off. I could go on with the amusing ways in which the British public would like to see you physically and emotionally tortured, Keith, if you want to. Just saying.
I'll take some questions. John.
Prime Minister, two issues here, obviously the aid and also the recognition of Palestine. First of all, on aid, what assurances did you receive from President Trump that he will use his influence with Prime Minister Netanyahu to allow the aid that you've talked about, the aid going in by trucks as well as by air.
What a waste of a question. He got no fucking promises at all. Like, this is the thing the British fucking press do. They're so fucking shit. They literally just run the fucking the defence for the entire situation. Look at this. Chris Mason, one of the lead fucking journalists for the BBC, saying Trump's visit provides Starmer with invaluable access. So you see, everyone, you must be a fool to think that it's a bad thing that Donald Trump is here. No, it's wonderful that the fucking sex pest, international war criminal piece of shit is here, actually, and you're a student politics fool if you don't understand that. Keir Starmer has absolutely no say in anything that Donald Trump ever does. Because, for a start off, even if he had any kind of influence via this invaluable access, Donald Trump would go into the next room and talk to a different person and do a different deal, which would totally undermine the deal you just did with him. You can see that from the way in which nobody knows what tariffs are on what country in what industries and from what time. Because he comes up with a new raft of tariffs and cuts a deal with this country, that country and the other country, and then says, oh, but it doesn't matter now because they're all paused until next February. Just an arbitrary date in the future. Because he always chickens out, right? So everyone is simultaneously in the kind of Schrodinger's tariff situation of both being tariffed and not being tariffed at the same time. Because no one knows what the fuck is happening. You can't cut a deal with Donald Trump because he never sticks to any deal. He never has and he never will. Thank you, MIC guy with Bitty Bits, who says, imagine a human rights lawyer watched human rights being violated on a massive scale and doing nothing. What a disgrace. Resign, Starmer, you knob. Correct. Also, I like the fact that you're a New Yorker who uses the phrase, you knob. I feel like I've been a good influence on you. I'm very proud of myself.
What assurance did you receive from him? He sounded as though when he talked about every ounce of food going in and you can't fake the pictures that we've seen on TV. Tell me about the reassurances you've heard, the promises, pledges from President Trump. And on the recognition issue, you do appear to have moved your position from as recently as last week, really, where you were talking about various other measures.
Yeah. Last week, if he'd have said this, he'd have had to have removed the whip from himself. But you see, the great noticing has taken place. And now, all of a sudden, he doesn't have to pretend as hard.
I'm wondering what has influenced you into making what looks like
the front pages of the newspapers with the skeleton babies on it. That's what's influenced him. The fact that the British public, already against his policy, have now been exposed to skeleton babies, which is a weird phrase but is an accurate depiction of the thing we all saw, on the front page of the newspapers, including the right-wing ones. I was very surprised the Daily Express went with the now infamous image of the woman cradling her child with the very, very obviously sort of exposed spinal column of the starving child in her arms. That's an image one can't quite get away from. It's very reminiscent of pictures of the Holocaust, pictures of the starvation of Armenians by the Turks, starvation of the Boers by the British. It's a part of that great genocide. I say great as in large lineage historically. Oh, Gabriel, or Gabriel, I suppose. I'm under no illusion. I know that he sees these pictures every day, but your average person does not. The average person does not follow these things, does not watch the videos that me and you and the political geeks have watched. They haven't seen these things. They hear people say it's a genocide, but what does that even mean? Most of them don't fucking know. And then you pick up the daily newspaper, expecting to see some front page with the Prime Minister on it or something boring. And you see that image. You see that image on the front page. That does something to you. That does instantly make you think, whoa, what the fuck is going on over there? This seems a lot worse than I've been led to believe. The political leadership and the media leadership of the country told me, oh, it's just anti-Semites kicking up a fuss. Turns out it wasn't. Turns out that the supposed anti-Semites, the supposed Hamas supporters, had been right all along. And so, with that great noticing taking place in the media, Keir Starmer has felt it necessary to have to come out and pretend to have been on the right side all along. It's literally, I mean, that is the phrase is so true. In the future, everyone will have claimed to have opposed this. In the future, everyone will claim that they were against what was taking place. And it's in the same way that now, like, in America, you still get some outright racists who will say, fuck Martin Luther King. But most of them say that Martin Luther King was a great American who fought for American values. I think it's fantastic there's a statue of him and that we have Martin Luther King Day, so it's fine. Don't look into who killed him and why. It's fine. Because he's not a threat anymore. That time has passed. And so you can accept him into the pantheon of safe liberalism. I think he moaned and complained about, warned about, during his lifetime. He was a very wise man. Anyway. So everyone will claim they were against the genocide that took place here, just like they claim they were against the Rwandan genocide, they claim they were against the Iraq war, they claimed, all of this stuff. The liberal, supports every civil rights struggle except the one currently happening, and opposes every war except the one that's currently being suggested. Because they're fucking useless. And Keir Starmer is the perfect exemplar of that. He is like millions of people who fall into that camp voted for this twat. He's not the leader Britain needs, but in a roundabout way I kind of feel he's the leader that Britain deserves. We've allowed ourselves to become so fucking shrunken. So supine, so prostrate before our leaders, that we don't deserve better than this. It's not until we ourselves grow a backbone and overthrow scum like this that we will actually be deserving of leaders better than this. It's grim. It's fucking grim. Is Noam Chomsky still denying the genocide in Gaza? I didn't realise that. Does Noam Chomsky deny that it's a genocide? Oh, that's very disappointing. Can he just hurry up and die? Like, I'm not wishing, I don't want anything bad to happen to him. I'm just saying, he's an old man, like a decrepitly old man. Can he just die? Because it's for his own good, if anything else. Because he just ruins his reputation with every modern thing he utters. Basically, everything he said from about 2010 onwards just makes him seem like more of a prick than he was. palate cleanser. Well, I don't need palate cleansers right now, 255, but I will probably shortly. But I do need suggestions for what you want to watch in the second half. So if people have suggestions for that, by all means, I'm open to those. Hello, Boy Meets Minnie. Everyone go and follow Boy Meets Minnie immediately.
U-turn here on this issue. Is it pressure from the 250 or so MPs, most of whom are Labour? Is it pressure from inside your cabinet?
Oh, that did happen as well. Yeah, a lot of his backbenchers signed a motion saying he should recognise Palestine. And given the kicking he recently received in Parliament, I don't think he's up for the fight right now.
We hear there are 7 cabinet ministers pressing you to push for recognising Palestine, or is it President Macron, who of course lobbied you? He talked about it last Thursday about.
Imagine that. He's being outflanked, like, egregiously by the French president. The French president is having to beg our prime minister to do the bare minimum. I'm about to say a thing, and it gives me no joy to say it. Especially because Emmanuel Macron is also scum. France is a better country than us. It just is. And it's partly because when things don't go right, they take action. Now, of course, I would never suggest direct action because that would be terrorism and bad. But in France, if they do some shit, like if they threaten to, raise the fucking retirement age by 2 days, all of a sudden Paris is on fire. I am not suggesting we should just set Britain on fire. I am suggesting we should set Paris on fire. Because, there's nothing that would bring Britain together more like war with France. It's always worked. I'm just saying, no, I'm only joking. France acts. It doesn't take that shit. If leaders want to be cunts, the people are cunts back. And so they end up with slightly better policies, a better standard of living, a functioning democracy of sorts, a functioning train system, roads that work, healthcare service that doesn't seem to be in constant crisis. And when you get on the Eurostar, it goes really quick in France. Notice how it doesn't when it gets here. That's not just by accident. Just saying. The President of France is having to lobby the Prime Minister to not be a massive cunt. Or at least to be less of a massive cunt. Can we stop? Can we just get off this timeline? Can we just stop time and reset it or something? Because this is fucking whack. We need France to start a cricket team and whoop England for once. Well, actually, technically France did have a cricket team, albeit not really. Cricket was once competed in at the Olympics. It was one of those late 19th century, very early Olympics, where the rules were a little bit lax. And there was the gold medal match was just one match. The entire tournament was just one match. And it was a team of English players against a team from France. Except, of course, there was one Frenchman and then 10 British people from the British Embassy in Paris who comprised the French team. And England, Britain, I should say, won. Yeah. Technically, France got a silver medal, though, in cricket, so, it's literally better than every other but one nation, so... We need to go back to those days of the Olympics. Enough of this cheating and corruption and all that sort of stuff. What you need is mental shit. What you need is the fucking St. Louis Marathon, for those who know that story. Fucking incredible shit. We need to go back to that. Click the link for a fun time. Oh, God. Well, you know I can't show this. It's terrorism. Honestly, the police are shit everywhere, man. So, this is French police trying to charge French firefighters. But the thing is, right, you don't fuck around with firefighters because they're actually brave. They see a fire in a building, and rather than doing the normal thing of saying, I'd like to go as far away from that situation as possible, because that's really dangerous and scary, they have the exact opposite of sort of task at hand, right? Their instinct is, give me a hose, I'm going into that motherfucker, right? That they're actually brave. They put their lives on the line. Whereas the coppers are used to like beating up a granny or like a black kid or something, you know what I mean? They're not brave. So what you've got is pampered, overly protected, overly paid losers trying to take on some actual tough guys. We'll see how that goes for them. We have no audio apparently, but so the police have charged. They're having a little bash, and then oh, that's right. The actually brave blokes start pushing back, and then it's gone. Oh, you're in full retreat, lads. Oh, it's a rout. It's embarrassing. They're throwing fireworks now. You're on fire. You're literally on fire. Which, I mean, to be fair, if there's one group of people you want to have around when you're on fire, it's firefighters, because they know how to handle that. They'll have that bit done in no time. That's a tiny little fire. They'll handle that in no time. It's fine. Dickheads. As if you'd start on the fucking firefighters. They can climb buildings and shit. You motherfuckers are waddling around eating your donuts. Don't fucking try it. Pricks.
Recognising the Palestine also at the UN General Assembly. And what difference do you think actually recognising Palestine will actually make in practical terms?
Oh yeah, Bumrah's not playing in the 5th test, is he? Which, you know, R.I.P. India.
Thank you for those questions. Firstly, on the question of...
Although, to be fair, the one game he didn't play is the one game they've won so far. But I think that's more coincidence than anything.
Aid. I won't go into the discussions I had with President Trump yesterday. We had a long session in private.
It was that bad. It went that poorly. He's not even going to try and pretend there was a good thing that happened. I'm not going to go into it. We don't need to talk about it. It went really well. We'll leave it there. Look, he thinks we've just met him. He thinks he thinks his lies work on us. Like we haven't seen him say this same shit a million times. That we don't know his tells. Fucking hell. Thank you, NYC guy. I have not played that game, so I don't understand the reference point. But I thank you nonetheless. What's this? Sex power. Why women were different and men were expendable. Oh no, Lindy Beige. In addition to his genocide denial, apparently he's also an incel or something. Oh God. Okay, we'll get into that shortly.
And we discussed the situation in Gaza, and you heard the way the President then put it in the press conference that we held afterwards. And I think you could see for yourself his concern about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, as is my concern, because we've been saying for some considerable time now we need to get more aid in at volume and at speed, and the situation now...
And what's preventing that from happening, Keith? Are you going to criticise to any degree?
Today, this pub behind me looks just like any other pub.
Why did the UK government nationalise this pub? Okay, I mean, I'm on board with that. Yeah, have you got anything to say whatsoever? Have you got any criticisms whatsoever for the people or institutions that have shut down that aid from going in the first place. Because you've criticised Hamas. Okay, fine. I don't like Hamas either. Fair enough. We'll leave that to one side. Have you got any criticisms whatsoever for the people stopping the aid going in, though? Because I haven't heard that so far, and I think that would be really important for you to actually say anything about that whatsoever. Just a thought.
Is absolutely catastrophic, which is why I've taken this decision today. In relation to the two-state solution and the recognition of Palestine, this has been long-standing Labour Party policy. It was in our manifesto.
So why have you waited a year to maybe do it?
We talked about the right of the Palestinians to recognition, and we've always
she does
said
have that
would be
right.
part of the process, and that it would be an important part of the point that we thought it would have maximum impact. It's driven today by two things. Firstly, the context in the intolerable situation in Gaza, which is getting worse by the day, but also because of the concern that the very possibility of a two-state solution is reducing. And
how can you reduce from zero? Because we've been at zero for a very long time now, Keith.
therefore, it is very important to be seen in that context as a very important contribution to what I hope will be an alleviation of the situation on the ground, because I'm acutely aware that what needs to happen urgently is that aid into Gaza at speed and at volume, and that ceasefire that can open the way for a political process. So this is a decision taken by this government in the context of today, and after a meeting with my cabinet just earlier this afternoon. On the question of the difference it will make, the reason we have announced this in the way we have in relation to the General Assembly in September is precisely because I want to ensure that this plays a part in changing the conditions on the ground.
I can't be bothered with him. I can't be bothered with it. He's annoying. He's annoying me now. Like, I've said what I want to say. He said what he wants to say. He's a wanker. I think we move on. I think we just move on. What's this? A quick visit to Birmingham. Okay. Bicycle guy and cat. Oh, pigeon. Oh, nice. That cat has more riz than me, and it's honestly, it's making me feel bad. Are they real plants or plastic? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
By the way, this is the nice bit of town round by the canals, the kind of regenerated bit, I guess, just off New Street, by the NIA. This is the bit of town where they actually collect the rubbish.
Hello. Can I take a picture?
Oh, it's kids.
He looks like my cat. Hello. Hello.
Okay, this is the not nice bit.
Yeah.
Can I say hello?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, what's her name?
Sigrid.
Oh my
Have you seen us here?
gosh, I've seen you guys. Hi, Sigrid.
Cheers, thank you.
That cat likes eating
Yeah,
stuff.
you like it in here? What do you think? Yeah. We're not in
Yeah.
London anymore.
Aww. That was nice. I suspect this won't be. Should we watch a man in... I mean, honestly, that jumper is screaming out to me 1960s university professor casual. Being an incel. Should we do that? What's Viv's suggestion?
You talk about killing.
Mehdi Hassan humiliates Israel. Oh no, we already did this one. Thank you for the suggestion, Mixed Vivian Wolf, who everyone should go and follow, by the way. But we already watched that. You are behind me on the slop radar, because we've already covered that one. Anyway, incel.
Evolutionary psychologists have done a lot of work looking at societies around the world and seeing how labour is divided between the sexes in them. And they've noticed quite a bit of variation, of course, but actually striking patterns that are perhaps more striking than the variations. Now, there are some tasks that are pretty much uniformly done by men. For example, anything that's dangerous. So if a job is likely to kill you or maim you, you're probably a man doing it. So if you want people to be lumberjacks or miners or sailors or soldiers, then you get a guy to do it. And how do you get a guy to do a dangerous job? Easy, tell him it's manly. Another job that's done almost exclusively by women is looking after children, particularly small children. And I think it doesn't take a genius to work out why that is. But maybe something you haven't thought of is that there are hormones in the brain which reward people for doing stuff, and women get different rewards. So, for instance, if a woman is breastfeeding a child, she's getting a hormone hit that makes her feel great in her head. And some women actually get addicted to these hormone hits. But guys, given a bottle to feed to the kid, even if it's their own child, and they think, oh, isn't he cute, and they love the child, they're still not getting the hormone hit that their wives would be getting. So they don't enjoy the task as much. And it's difficult to persuade people to do stuff that they just don't enjoy very much.
Yeah, like giving birth isn't dangerous, yeah. People forget this. Up until very, very recently in the Western world, it's still dangerous elsewhere, of course, but where we have like significant medical infrastructure in the West. Up until very recently, like, childbirth was one of the leading causes, in fact, the leading cause up until very recently, of deaths of women under 50. Nothing else killed more. No disease, no war, nothing. Just getting pregnant. It's fucking scary to think about. Very scary. Also, of course, with the fact that children would survive less, they would have to give birth more and therefore increase many times over their levels of danger and exposure to that. Because essentially you had to have like 6 kids in order to ensure that 3 of them got to adulthood. Human animals. Oh, amazing.
Kibbutz is an interesting experiment. In kibbutzes in Israel, they gave boys and girls absolutely identical treatment from day one, exactly the same education and so forth, and it was entirely up to those people when they grew older to choose what they wanted to do, and it was thought that this experiment would lead to both sexes doing almost all the tasks, and interestingly the reverse happened.
Wow, I wonder if there's anything wrong with Israeli society that might have skewed any results.
And people were given absolute perfect choice of what they ended up doing. They actually divided along...
And they all decided to kill Palestinians. They decided to have a rave on the outskirts of a fucking concentration camp.
Sex lines more than in mainstream society, interestingly. So all the jobs that were dangerous, all the jobs that involved being outdoors an awful lot, heavy lifting and so forth, ended up being done by men. And all the people who ended up looking after kids and working in the library and so forth, they're all women. I mean, not all, but you know what I mean. It was a very, very strong, clear division along sex lines. Now, one of the reasons that men do dangerous things is that men are expendable. Yeah, sorry guys, but, well, we are. If half the men...
Okay, but like, it also has something to do with the sexual dimorphism of the fact that men are generally larger, stronger, faster. So yeah, if you have something to do which is dangerous, you give it to the person who's most likely to be able to complete that task. Not because women are incapable, we're just playing the numbers. It's just the averages. If you need to reach a thing that's higher up, you get the person that's taller. If you need to fight a bear, you send the strongest person to fight the fucking bear, don't you? Like, it's not that fucking crazy. It's not that men are inherently expendable. The fuck is wrong with you? Why are you doing this weird fucking MRA shit? God, this is tragic.
Men in a tribe died, the tribe could bounce back. I mean, the remaining men could fertilise all the women. There'd be just as many kids the next generation, and the population would bounce back. Everything would be fine. If a tribe lost half its women, it's not going to bounce back from that very quickly, is it? The next generation is going to be much smaller. And what if it lost half its women, but not half its men? So now there are loads more men. So half the men in the tribe...
Loads of gay sex. Sounds good to me.
Now can't get a wife at all. Well, that's a recipe for disaster, isn't it? That's unrest and warfare and bloodshed and murder and nasty things. So losing your women...
It just seemed like you were suggesting that men are just inherently fucked up. They couldn't possibly deal with that situation in any kind of, reasonable way. Some sort of polyamorous society could emerge. No, it would have to be slaughter.
is much bigger blow for a society. So that's why women are the most valuable things in society. And that's why you don't, for instance, protect women using other women, because that doesn't make any sense. We must protect our women from some danger from outside. Okay, put the women in the front line with... Oh, no, that's not going to work, is it? No. People don't approve of women fighting in the front line, because if you're trying to protect the women in the...
Well, ironically, the society you just prayed in aid, Israel, does. Israel has women that fight in the IDF. Everyone has to sign up for the IDF. So, I mean, actually, that's not necessarily true, is it?
The society, which is what you should do for the good of society, then no, men do that because we can afford to lose loads of them. It doesn't matter. They're just men. They're replaceable. They're expendable. They don't really matter so much. So that's one of the main reasons why men ended up doing an awful lot of dangerous stuff. Now, marriages. You could say, wait a minute, though, surely women didn't always get the choice of whom they married. Surely a lot of women had to marry that guy there because their family told them to. And yes, that's true. A lot of marriages were arranged, and a lot of women didn't get the choice of whom they married. But by exactly the same token, neither did the guys. Those women were marrying guys. So for the guy, it was...
Right, but only one of the two that were forced into the relationship now essentially owns the other. Has all of the power in that situation. So, like, I'm not suggesting that it's good for either person. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I think forced marriages, arranged marriages, whatever, are bad. But the man essentially owned the woman, was the boss of the woman. So at least they had power in their own home. Whereas the woman had literally nothing. She had no choice, no agency, no power, no legal rights.
Just as arranged a marriage as it was for the woman. So in fact, as for taking power out of the hands of women because these daughters are forcibly married off, because a daughter is a valuable thing. So if a family has this daughter, this resource, it can then marry that daughter off this resource to another family and use her as a valuable bit of treasure, as a pawn in the game. So taking power
Yeah, that is what happened.
away from her, you could say, yeah, but she's still marrying a guy and the guy didn't choose her.
Right, but she's now owned as a piece of meat by that man and their family. Maduderino. Can you not see how it's way worse for the woman? Can you honestly not see that? Hello there, Dr. Phil Deck, who says, my partner just came into the room and said, why the fuck is he listening to this whelk? An apt description. True.
So, is that not sort of... Is the guy she marries, is he not sort of equally a victim of that control by others?
Not necessarily an equally victim, but yeah, I mean, if your argument is patriarchy also hurts men, yeah, it does.
I would suggest that
I presume that's not what he's saying, but if you were making that argument, you would be correct.
perhaps he is. Now, people think of mistresses and so forth as powerless and wives as more powerful, but in fact, it seems that's not really the case. It's a bit counterintuitive, but I'll give you the example of George III. Now, George III was nice. He played the game properly. He loved his wife, he kept no mistresses, and he was a good, sound chap. And he disapproved of Georges I and II, who went before him, who had loads of mistresses is what I meant to say. I'm sure they had mysteries as well, but that's not to the point. And those mistresses became very powerful, and the women in court in general became, in George's I and II's time, very, very powerful. Because think of it, a mistress has the ear of the king, direct line to the king. So if I want a royal commission for this thing this project I have in mind, but I don't have access to the king. Maybe I have access to that woman who knows that woman, and she's a mistress of the king. So if I'm really nice to her, then maybe she'll pass the message to so and so. And the women in court got
patronage through courtly practice. Yeah, it's what is the point of this video? This is so pointless.
to know about what everybody wanted. And of course that's power. Knowledge is power. Influence is power. They could then say, okay, right, well maybe I will have a word with the king about this thing that you want, but what are you going to do for me? And they became very, very powerful. But in George III's time, when suddenly, no, I won't be keeping any mistresses.
If you knew anything about history outside of like England, I think probably the better example you would use would be the harem at the court of the Sultan in the Ottoman Empire, which was much more nakedly and obviously a power play situation, where you would have the mistresses, for want of a better phrase, of the Sultan fighting to get their son into privileged positions, or fighting to get the thing that they wanted, or whatever, up to the point of killing other people's sons in order to stop them getting the position. Like, it was really, really like a game of horrible, murderous intrigue. But that would take you knowing anything about history outside of, oh, English kings, posh people, George III, I'm gonna wank, which you obviously don't care about. So there's that.
We'll have no people keeping mistresses in court, thank you. None of that, said George III. Boom! Suddenly, the women at court had far less power because people weren't keeping mistresses. It's often thought that the keeping of mistresses is to the advantage of men, but actually, it seems it's mostly to the advantage of women.
I wouldn't say mostly to the advantage of women, especially since though the man has all the power to cease that arrangement whenever it suits them. But there we go. What's this? Oh god, another white bloke.
Today, this pub behind me looks just like any other pub in Britain, but just over 100 years ago, this pub was nationalised and taken over and run by the British government. The person behind the bar was a civil servant, paid by the government to serve alcoholic drinks to people. And it wasn't like this was like a secret spy base or anything like that. It was literally just a pub. And the weird part is that this wasn't the only one. There were actually hundreds of pubs that were taken over and run by the British government, and some of them were run that way for most of the 20th century. I think this is one of the weirdest and craziest stories in modern British history that most people have never heard of. I had never heard about it until recently, and it played a part in the creation of the modern British family pub as we know it today. Most of the pubs that were nationalised were up in the north of England in Carlisle.
I'll be honest, I don't care. I want to watch the football thing. Right, this is about football, but as it says there, it's not just about football, okay? It's a bit of social history and all of that shite.
This is not a complete history of England, English football, or the year 1985. It's an overview of English football's annus horribilis. Many on and off-field events shaped society and the football world during the 1980s. Some of them especially tragic. Some of these disasters feature in this video, but we do not cover them or other events in the depth that they deserve here. We have plans to look at various events from the 1980s that changed the game and reshaped society and culture in more detail in the future. Viewed from a safe distance, English football in...
I went there. That's the old Wembley. It was shit. I went there in the mid-90s. It was falling to pieces. It did need to be torn down. And it was.
The 1980s is often
And
romanticised
rebuilt.
and glorified as the last great full decade for the sport in the country. Entry to stadiums cost a fraction of what it does today, and you could usually pay at the gate. Then, when you were inside, you could scour the terraces for the perfect spot, and even move if you fancied a different view a little later on. Players made decent but not exorbitant money, and were less like elite athletes and more like your dad, up for a midweek 10-pinter and a bare-knuckle chat in the pub car park. The FA Cup was at peak magic, and you could buy cod and chips, 2 pickled eggs, and 6 cans of ale for 4 crow's feet and half a newt's tail. But the 1980s was a truly tumultuous decade for English football, with several tragic low points. When rock bottom was finally hit, the only feasible solution was a revolution. When looking for the worst year in the decade, 1985 doesn't even need to dip for the line. As a collective 12 months, the national game confronted years of violence, stadium neglect, and social decay. Before we dive into the mid-decade debacle, let's colour in some context. England failed to qualify for the 1974 and 1978 World Cups. They also didn't qualify for the 1972 and 1976 European Championships. They then failed to qualify for the 1984 tournament too, along with all the other home nations. As a result, the main broadcasters, BBC and ITV, decided it wasn't even worth broadcasting the showpiece in France live on television. With no British representation, what was the point in dedicating precious airtime to live football? Like the national team,
Also, Platini's a tit. Fine player, but a tit.
the English game had slid into disrepute and ignominy. This despite English teams dominating the European Cup from the late 1970s. But there were little to no casual football fans as the mid-80s approached. The game was simply too toxic. The common perception was that football fans were idiots, hooligans, criminals.
Yeah, the current Wembley Stadium stands where the old one was. But it did need to be torn down and started again. There was no, just doing some upkeep on it. It was crumbling. It had wooden seats in the 90s. It was fucking awful.
Criminals in waiting, or a seductive mix of all four. A lingering threat of serious violence hung over stadiums and the surrounding streets on match days. And those stadiums, most of which had been built in the early 20th century and into war years, were decrepit and crumbling with the most basic animalistic facilities, and often no facilities at all for women. It's no surprise then.
It's not an amazing... I assume, because they're just doing, B-roll footage of stadiums. When talking about old stadiums and how shit they were, showing a stadium that didn't exist at the time. Rather than the old main road, which did sort of fall into that category of a bit of a dump. I'm sorry to have to say it was a bit of a dump. It's not remotely unusual for English football. St Andrews was as bad, if not worse. Actually, they've upgraded it significantly recently, which is a bit weird because they're about to fucking get rid of it and build a new stadium with transport links and everything. But yeah, this is the Etihad, the old city of Manchester. Main road is a dump, but it's my dump. Exactly as Friends Rust, and was your dump, yeah. And I feel the same about St Andrews. I will miss it enormously when it's gone. I've spent unspeakable hours of torment in that place, and it's like a second home, and I will miss it. I hope they do something to commemorate it having been there for so long, because like it's changing a stadium is like quite a big thing. I think it's like a once in a lifetime, once in a century type thing. And if you look at what they did to the old Upton Park, the bowling ground, West Ham, there's basically nothing there now to suggest there was ever a stadium there. There's no commemoration. The fact that generations of people went there and spent happy times, bad times, the height of emotions at this place for decades and decades and decades. Entire lives were lived and lost in the time that was there. And now it's just gone, replaced by high-end flats, because obviously. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope there's something there. I don't know what, but just a little something.
That average attendances were tumbling. In 1973, the average Division 1 attendance was 30,257. Over the following years, it fell into the high 20,000s. From 1980 to 1984, the averages were 26,327, 24,682, 22,556, 20,126, 18,834. Some numbers for you there. Following one of the tragedies in 1985, an article in the Sunday Times described football as a slum sport played in slum stadiums and increasingly watched by slum people. As this awful year unfolded...
Now, that's not necessarily an incorrect analysis. What I will say, though, is it's really interesting that a writer for a broadsheet newspaper whose policies led to the creation of the slum people, as they call them, uses that as an excuse to be shitty toward them when it's them that created it in the first place. You created the slums. Are you surprised that slum people live there?
It was a sentiment shared by many across the country.
Oh, the old baseball ground, yeah, Derby. Another fucking dump that needs to be gotten rid of.
The first notable flashpoint came only 5 days into the year, on the 5th of January. Burton Albion then...
I was at the old main road centre circle. See, that's something. Yeah, there you go. That's what I mean, yeah. There's a place for you to go to that you can be like, oh, this is the thing. This is where it was. Yeah, that's kind of beautiful, actually, as Friends Rust. I like that. Look, because it's just a public space for the people who live there now, right? All these flats and houses that have been built. Which is fine, like, people need to live places. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't build houses on places that are like a brownfield site. But you can also go there and relive your memories and stuff. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a public park, really. Very small public park, but it is.
Then a part-time outfit in the Northern Premier League faced off against Division 1 Leicester, who had Gary Lineker and Alan Smith leading the line. With the two teams separated by less than 30 miles, and given the constant threat of hooliganism across the country, the game was moved to a neutral venue, Derby County's baseball ground, for safety reasons.
For safety reasons, they put it in this fucking dump. Look at it. Fuck me. And Derby County had been fucking English League champions like 7-8 years before. Fuck me.
As Burton's goalkeeper and captain, Paul Evans, recalls, it didn't take long for the trouble to start. Someone threw a can in the goalmouth just after the start.
Oh, so yeah, no, I went to the old baseball ground. Yeah, no, it was a fucking shithole. Absolute dump.
Picked it up. It was full of sand. The fans behind the goal threw coins towards the pitch too, one of which hit Evans. However, a far heavier block of wood followed, striking Evans on the head and knocking him out. The game was paused as Evans' teammates and manager, Neil Warnock, checked on his condition. In The Guardian's That 1980s Sports blog, Evans describes feeling nauseated, vomiting on the pitch, and then continued...
Oh, see, that's... Hang on, no. This is quite nice, actually, what they've done with Highbury, the old Arsenal stadium. Look. Literally, they've essentially built the houses in the shape of the stadium. That's Highbury Square, that's where the pitch was. That's fucking dope. I'm okay with that. That's something. Because of course, I mean, that great team played there, you know. Henry and Perez and Lundberg and all those fuckers ran up and down that very narrow pitch. I went to the old Highbury. It was a bit of a shithole. It was a larger shithole than I'm used to, but it was a bit of a shithole.
To throw up in the changing room at half-time. In the meantime, Evans had conceded 2 more goals, both of which he has no memory of. Having made their one permitted substitution, Evans wanted to play on. Reluctant to go down to 10 men, Burton allowed it. The score finished 6-1 to Leicester, but there was considerable fallout. Burton appealed on principle. The Burton manager, Warnock, said, "Whoever is playing, hooligans must not be allowed the opportunity."
What I love about this is that Neil Warnock would then, a few years later, go on to do the Battle of Bramall Lane, where he purposely got a game called off by having too many of his own players purposefully sent off. He got them to foul so much that they didn't have enough players to continue the game, and the game was halted. Just saying, you know. Like, everyone bigs Warnock up as if he's... I think he's a fucking prick. I've always not liked him. He's like, you know, I'm a Yorkshireman, ain't I? I know everything. You can't tell me fuck all. I'm fucking perfect. Prick.
Opportunity of altering the course of a match. With the finger of blame pointing at Leicester fans, their club secretary, Alan Bennett, came out swinging.
Oh yeah, as friends Rust, you're absolutely right. Ellen Road, Leeds, is a shithole. And you know how I know it's a shithole? Because you know when they filmed The Damned United, the incredible, what's his fucking name? The Welsh actor, I've totally forgotten his fucking name. Anyway, plays Brian Clough when he took over at Leeds for 30 odd days, wherever it was. They needed to film outside the old Ellen Road in the 1970s, right? And so they sort of went through this process of like trying to put together maybe like some sort of studio where they would recreate the old Ellen Road and do it. And then someone just Michael Sheen, fine socialist by the way. Anyway, they decided they went to visit Ellen Road now, and they went, this would just do. Like, it wouldn't take that much change. You'd have to change maybe the sign because that looks a bit too modern. But other than that, they put the old sign back up, like the old, you know, Leeds United Association football thing right outside the stadium. But other than that, they realised that the outside of the stadium, what was about 10 years ago now, looked exactly like it did in 1974 or whatever. Like, it just hadn't changed really at all. It was still the same shithole it was 50 years before, or 40 years before. And they're still fucking playing at Ellen Road. Absolute joke.
Of the 6,000 tickets sold behind the goal, only 1,828 were issued by Leicester. The rest were sold at the gate on the day to anyone. There were incidents earlier in the match when Leicester fans behind the goal were hit by missiles from the stand above. The feeling was that the culprits were Derby people. Naturally, this didn't go down well in Derby. But Bennett's words did raise a valid point. Anyone could turn up on the day of a game and pay at the turnstiles. If enough people were intent on causing violence at a football game, any football game, whether it was their team playing or not, they could. The FA ordered a replay behind closed doors, choosing to send a message that crowd violence must not be seen to pay. Ultimately, Leicester finally saw off Burton 1-0 at an all but empty Highfield Road in Coventry.
Oh, the old Highfield Road as well. Look, I don't want you to feel like I'm being too harsh here, but that was another shithole.
Between March 1984 and March 1985, coal miners in the north of England and parts of Scotland went on strike in an attempt to resist the closure of pits that the government deemed uneconomic. The coal industry was nationalised and had been since 1947. There are numerous links between football, the miners' strike and the mining heartlands, and we hope to explore them in more detail in later videos, so we'll be brief here. In the context of 1985, it's important to note that the strike officially ended on the 3rd of March, defeated by...
Also, there's a fantastic story, which I hadn't heard until about a year ago or something, of Bruce Springsteen, obviously famously a bit of a leftoid, and he came to play in Britain, and he didn't understand anything about the strike, miners' strike at all, and this was back in like the middle of the 80s. And played a gig in somewhere like Newcastle, I think, and met these miners and all the rest of it, and immediately signed over a cheque for like £5,000, which back in 1985 was worth a lot of money. It's a huge sum of money. And in solidarity with them, which I thought was fucking dope, because he didn't know shit about it, and he was told about it and went, that seems like a thing that you need help with, and so he did. Good lad. And he wouldn't have been as rich then as he is now. Bear that in mind.
By the Thatcher government, the miners trudged back to work. The impact on communities and, by extension, football fans and clubs was regionalised. The strike hadn't affected the electricity supply in the UK, so life carried on as normal for many people in the south of the country. While class and political beliefs viciously divided communities in the epicentre of the strike, it wasn't uncommon for people living hundreds of miles away to barely give it a second thought. But plenty of famous footballing voices expressed their opinions, and it probably comes as no surprise that one of them was Brian Clough. The then Nottingham Forest manager was an ardent supporter of miners and mining communities, arguing that all right-minded working-class fans should contribute towards the Miners' Fund. England World Cup winner Jack Charlton, a former miner himself, lent picketers his car to travel across the country. Returning to Clough, his strident views
I
came...
met Jack Charlton, lovely bloke, really, really fucking like. He's one of the. I only spent like an hour with him. He was in a pub. The Blues played Leeds in, I think it was a League Cup quarter-final or semi-final back in the 90s. And he played for Leeds for years. But he's this obviously big Geordie lad. And he's quite tall. You don't think he was quite tall, you know. He must have been about 6'4" or something. And yeah, he was like, he's exactly like the Jack Charlton you think exists. Like he's exactly that person. It's not an act. It's not him like pretending to be that. That's Jack Charlton. Just this slightly larger than life Geordie bloke who just like gives a fuck about things. It was cool. Good lad. Unlike his slightly hoity-toity grammar school educated brother, of course, who lost his accent very quickly, didn't he? The Blues, Birmingham City Ground, is pretty awful, especially around the back. It looks like a cattle shed. No, to be fair, they've upgraded the Blues, the St Andrews now. It's not too bad. It's not desperately bad at all. To be fair, I don't mind us getting a new stadium, but it's not the worst stadium in the country by a long shot. Have you ever watched The Damned United? I don't give a fuck about football, but I enjoyed that film. Well, not only have I seen the film, I'd read the book before the film, and it's exceptional.
Against a controversial backdrop in Nottinghamshire, most of the county's miners chose to carry on working, leaving whole towns and villages divided between strikers and scabs, those who crossed the picket line. Naturally, this approach outraged those out on strike. Today, there's still animosity between Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest fans, although, depending on who you ask, the hatred flows more in one direction. Chesterfield-Mansfield fixtures, once simply known as a Derbyshire-Nottinghamshire rivalry, became far more ferocious after the industrial action of 1984-85.
Thanks, Thatcher, you piece of shit. Interestingly, she doesn't have any problems with heating at the moment because she's literally in a lake of fire for eternity. She's very toasty.
To the extent that these games are referred to today as the Miners' Strike Derby. But back to the strike. We're supposed to be keeping this short. The government mobilised the full force of the police, the courts, and the British media to
1312, everybody.
crush the miners, culminating with the sickening scenes at the Battle of Orgreave on the 18th of June 1984. The South Yorkshire police that was unleashed at Orgreave was the same force at the heart of the Hillsborough disaster and cover-up 5 years later.
Yep, South Yorkshire police. A hive of scum and villainy.
In an article titled "Orgreave was part of the class war that ended with 96 dead at Hillsborough," this was written before Andrew Devine passed away in 2021, becoming the 97th victim. Owen Jones writes, "In the 1980s, the police were politicised, transformed into blunt instruments as part of a wider, concerted mission to neutralise the British Labour movement. It was in this context that South Yorkshire police were encouraged to dehumanise striking miners, to see them as violent, extremist, enemy within scum. When they violently charged at miners, lied about their behaviour with the complicity of the British media, dictated false witness statements and tried to stitch up their victims, they began a long march that ended in the Hillsborough disaster and 96 dead Liverpool fans. It was class war, and it ended with bodies sprawled in make-do mortuaries." An oral history created by Professor Robert Gildee and Professor Jim Phillips at Oxford University's Faculty of History also states that the Thatcher government's strategy was to close the collieries, break the miners' union and the labour movement in general, and open the way to a free market economy in which deregulated financial capitalism would be set free by the Big Bang of 1986. The government's contempt for the working classes and unshakable desire to destroy two bastions.
Now, the police were politicised, obviously, before 1980s, but they were rarely so nakedly targeted as a very specific group. There had been, they were always there at the permanent behest of capital. That's literally why the police were invented, to protect the property of rich people. Or rich and middle class people, whatever. But essentially, as long as that was protected, the police were not directed and used. At least in part because the police didn't want to be directed and used. This is a mutually reinforcing thing between Toryism and Toryism. So the Toryism of the Tory party and the Toryism naturally inherent within the police that wanted to combine to destroy the miners and working class solidarity. And they've been very successful in doing it. One hates to post one's L's, but the working class took a big fat L in this. It's very simple.
Of the British working class, football and the coal industry ultimately brought about a resounding victory. The miners had been crushed. The titans of finance and the neoliberal ideologues who released them had secured a resounding victory. Indeed, Thatcher's conquest of the miners and her government's dismantling of the labour movement had an unprecedented impact on British life over the coming decades, including, by extension, the creation of the Premier League. What followed in the national game was the definition of gentrification, a phenomenon that would later worm its way into the downtrodden parts of cities across the country. A run-down, sneered-at entity on its knees, scooped up by ambitious moneymen, presumably...
Yeah, can we get some lols in chat for Margaret Thatcher being very dead? Because that is righteous.
Referring to themselves as disruptors and visionaries, shaken free of its cash-strapped, uneducated population and transformed into a glossy, sanitized, soulless commodity that deifies the American model. In early 1985, unemployment levels in the UK reached 12%. Andrew Marr notes in his History of Modern Britain, two Britons emerged as the decade wore on. The rich got richer, but the bottom 10% saw their incomes fall by about 17%. A lot of people fell through the cracks. Once Britain had prided itself on not seeing people sleeping on the streets or begging. Not anymore. The miners' strike was symbolic of the dismantling.
Imagine that. Imagine your political legacy being the country is now fine with homelessness. Honestly, you earned that trip to the eternal flames, Margaret. You really did. It was 1981, not 1980 at Hillsborough. What? No, that happened in 1989. What are you talking about? What? What's this? Oh, did it nearly happen in 1981? Hundreds of Tottenham fans were allowed out onto the gate to spend over 2 hours crossing the barrier. 38 fans were injured. Sadly, the lessons were never learned. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. I've heard from people who attended games at that time, because obviously it was before my time. But people have said before that, you know, I was in a crowd at such and such a stadium, and like that nearly happened to us, because the stadiums were really, really poorly upkept. The safety was appalling. There was like no stewarding whatsoever. The police didn't give a fuck, and they, because of the crowd troubles, they had fencing up everywhere. So loads of people had been involved in crushes at football stadiums. It's just they were usually crushes that, you know, maybe you get a bit injured, but yeah, whatever. But at Hillsborough it was especially appalling because it was such a big game, you know. And I mean, there's no way it should have been held at fucking Sheffield anyway. An awful stadium to hold such an event at.
Of the British working class. The long-standing sense of belonging once found at work and in communities dwindled or disappeared entirely. Britain's coal industry was on the road to annihilation, and the deindustrialization process eviscerated once powerful
the Ibrox
cities
Stadium disaster. The Ibrox Stadium disaster is a fascinating one, where it was on the way out of the stadium, wasn't it? It was like a big staircase that led to a crush, and then there was like a kind of concertina of fans falling on top of each other down the stairs. Fucking awful thing. I mean, they're Rangers fans, but I still don't want to see them get killed, and many of them did get killed.
Transformed the economy, creating new winners and losers. The failure of the strike paved the way for privatization of nationalized industries, including steel, railways, gas, telecoms, and water.
And now everything's fine because the private, the hand of the free market sorted everything out, and now all of those industries are awesome and definitely still work.
Part of the wider globalization process that would revolutionize the world. The era of neoliberalism, rampant capitalism, never-ending growth, and the eternal search for record profits was ushered in. Within a decade or so, English football would be unrecognisable. The FA Cup sixth round tie between Luton and Millwall has gone down in infamy. While it was a particularly shocking example of the hooliganism that had taken the game hostage and broadcast live on primetime TV, hundreds of similar incidents had taken place across the country and continent over the years. Only days earlier, on the 4th of March, Chelsea hosted Sunderland in the League Cup semi-final second leg. When the tie slipped beyond Chelsea, Blues fans invaded the pitch in an attempt to fight the Sunderland following. Instead, they tangled with police, missiles flying through the air. 104 people were arrested, and 40 people were...
Actually, people forget how bad Stamford Bridge was. That was a fucking dump as well, before it got renovated. I'm not saying it's perfect now, but at least it's, you know, a workable stadium.
Injured, including 20 police officers and stewards. Legend has it that a mounted policeman was in the penalty area when Colin West scored Sunderland's third goal. At the final whistle, some
horses are on the pitch. They think it's all over. It is nay. Because horses say nay.
Supporters again invaded the pitch, getting close enough to players to throw punches at them. And later in the year, Liverpool and Manchester United played out a notorious 2-2 draw at Goodison Park in the FA Cup semi-final. Stanley Park's surroundings and the narrow streets of Walton became a battleground for young fans of both teams. In the bear pit of a stadium, missiles flew through the air, including the infamous nail-embedded golf balls. Trouble flared throughout the game.
A golf ball with nails in it. Fucking hell, that's basically like a little mace.
The corners of Goodison, where the two sets of fans butted up against each other. By 1985, Millwall's association with hooliganism was, to put it plainly, well established. The Bushwhackers, a hooligan firm tied to Millwall that had evolved from the original F-Troop firm, was among the most notorious in the country. The FA had closed the Den, Millwall's home ground, on numerous occasions following crowd violence, and the club had received fines for these incidents too. Given that Luton had their own MIG firm, Millwall requested that their opponents make the game all ticket to reduce the chances of incidents. Luton ignored the proposal. The following travelling
Luton told them to get wrecked.
up from London was,
and they did,
disproportionately large for a Millwall away game. In fact, it was twice the size of the club's average home attendance. In an article...
Well, you say that hooligan firm names are fucking stupid. And that's true to a large extent. But I do quite like the story behind the Birmingham City's firm, the Zulu Army. Which sounds like it's going to be very racist, and it isn't. It's actually to do with the Boer War, which we've mentioned before, haven't we? Returning convalescing soldiers from the Boer War, so the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, had to be housed. And so the ones in Birmingham, they built these special, I don't even know what you'd call them really, like maisonette flats that looked out on a big square, or rectangle, that looked out on like a central courtyard bit, on what was basically empty ground at the edge of what was then the city. Because Birmingham was still kind of moving outwards and would eventually envelop it massively for miles and miles. But at the time, it was the edge of the city. And so the government built this stuff, and the Boer War army people were in there, right? And they were convalescing, and they essentially just sort of stayed there. And then about 5 years later, they decided to build St Andrews, the stadium, on the site of the old St Andrews Church, which had to be knocked down. And so they became some of the first followers of the football club. And so it's sort of this idea of us being a Zulu army. And literally one of the stands is called the Cup, after the Spy on a Cup in the Zulu Wars. And so it kind of stuck through the decades. So when this fucking shite came out, it's sort of the Zulu army was the chant. Which I quite like. There's a sort of history to it. It's not just based on like the timetable of the train that we take from fucking Portsmouth or whatever. It's a real thing, which I quite like. Even though they're violent twats, but that's neither here nor there.
For 442 magazine, Richard Edwards writes, inexplicably, the FA Cup quarter-final between Luton and Millwall wasn't an all-ticket affair, which gave Lions supporters carte blanche to rope in some help from fans of Chelsea and West Ham in a rampage that further stained the already far from spotless reputation of English fans, both domestically and, crucially, in Europe. Rampage is one way to describe it. Riot seems more accurate. As early as 5 p.m. that evening, newsagents and pubs in Luton were reporting trouble and smashed windows. Come 7 o'clock, the vast terrace of the Kenilworth Road stand, allocated to away...
The Governors is Dom. The Blazing Squad is the fucking cringiest shit I've ever heard. Do they not just get laughed at and bullied by the other hooligans? Imagine turning up and you're fighting the Blazing Squad. Oh God. That's tragic. Oh. Look, I feel like they deserve to get beaten up. They deserve to have violence done to them. That's very poor.
Away fans was overflowing. Around 7:10, some of the away following scaled the
Is
fence.
anyone even watching this? Is there anyone left in the chat? My numbers are absolutely exactly where they were. Why are people watching this? I didn't expect anyone to stick around for this nonsense, but thank you.
At the front.
Don't forget, if you're enjoying the content, you can subscribe. Subscribe with Amazon Prime. Gift subs to the community. You can do bits messages and super chats and memberships and give memberships. Fucking kill me.
Front of the stand and rushed down the pitch, heading for the Luton supporters in the Oak Road end. They threw cans, bottles, nails and coins, causing the Luton fans to flee, or at least try. With fans still entering the stand prior to kickoff, there was nowhere for so many people to go. The hooligans then turned their attention to the Bobbers stand, tearing out seats to use as weapons. In the meantime, the players had attempted to come out and warm up, but had understandably headed straight back down the tunnel. The scoreboard displayed a message saying that the game wouldn't start until order was restored. It was ignored. Millwall manager George Graham appealed for the hooligans to return to the stand, but they ignored him too. It was only the combination of Graham's presence on the sideline and the arrival of...
He's got to be dead now, hasn't he, George Graham? Surely. Maybe not, I don't know. He's got to be well into his fucking 80s or 90s if he was. No, he's still with us. He's only 80. Oh, okay. I thought he'd be older than that. He's from Bargeddy in Scotland. Well, there you go.
Police dogs that finally restored relative peace. However, some isolated fights continued to break out as the away fans found their way into other parts of the ground. When the game did start, it only lasted 14 minutes before fans spilled onto the pitch again. Given what had come before, the referee didn't hesitate to take the players back down the tunnel. After a 24-minute delay, play resumed. Somehow, the match reached its conclusion, Luton winning 1-0.
That's what I mean as friends, Rust. I remember him growing up with him as Arsenal manager when I was a kid, and he looked like he was about 80 then, back in like 1994. He was in his 40s or whatever.
A bolstered police presence managed to keep the crowd in the stands,
or 50s,
for the most part.
Whatever, you know what I mean.
Luton's goalkeeper, Les Seeley, had to stand in front of the Millwall following in the second half and was hit on the head with a missile. A match steward was also hit with a chair, and a knife was found in Seeley's goalmouth after the game.
Jesus Christ!
At the final whistle, both sets of players sprinted off the pitch as hooligans poured onto it. They continued to tear seats out of the Bobbers stand, hurling them onto the field and toward the police. Initially, the hooligans on the field outnumbered the law, forcing them to retreat. But the police regrouped and charged in waves, batons drawn. Amidst the riot, Sergeant Colin Cook was struck on the head with a concrete block. He fell in the centre circle and stopped breathing. A fellow officer, PC Phil Evans, managed to resuscitate Cook despite being kicked, punched and hit with the concrete himself.
That's not even funny. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing at that, chap? Why are you laughing? You're out of order. See, the police can do something about it when it's other police they need to help.
A running battle between the London following and the police continued outside the ground after the game, resulting in damage to homes, shops and cars. The Luton chairman at the time was David Evans, a close confidant of Margaret Thatcher. His club's stadium had been trashed, so he didn't waste the opportunity to win the Prime Minister's favour. He banned all away fans from Luton's games and introduced an ID scheme, planting the seed for Thatcher to do the same nationwide. Evans's actions were criticised by the Football League and loathed by fans. Then Luton manager David Pleat said, He was a naughty boy, David. He was Mrs. Thatcher's plaything.
David Pleat annoyed the fuck out of me. And I'll tell you for one reason, right? It was after he'd stopped being a manager years after, right? We're talking the 2000s. There was an Israeli footballer called Yossi Benayoun. And that's fine. I'm not making a point about politics or anything like that, right? David Pleat decided he was doing like the co-commentary bit on like a Champions League game with when Benayoun was at Liverpool, and he decided not to just mispronounce Yossi Benayoun's name, but to mispronounce it 6 different ways. And he kept mentioning him more than you would think he would mention any individual player, especially a player that wasn't great or anything, like he wasn't the star of the show. And he just kept doing it, and you know when you notice something and you don't like, you can't not notice it. It becomes like a slight obsession that you just keep noticing the thing, and it keeps happening. And I couldn't tell you anything about the game. I couldn't tell you what the score was. I don't even know who the fuck they were playing. I don't remember. But I remember David Pleat mispronouncing this one player's name wrong a dozen different fucking ways. Choose one mispronunciation and go with it, or don't say his name. Say the Liverpool number 7 or whatever, the Liverpool midfielder. You don't even have to say his fucking name, because you obviously can't fucking pronounce it, you dickhead. So I'm not a fan of David Pleat.
He wanted a safe
for the most serious reason imaginable.
Tory seat. I didn't agree with it, but there was no discussion, no debate. Evans was elected as MP for Welwyn Hatfield, a safe Tory seat,
what a surprise.
In 1987.
Thatcher's corruption, naked, obvious, on show.
After the Conservatives retained power in the 1983 election, the Thatcherite project was consolidated. This was the death knell for Britain's traditional manufacturing sector, but football was in the crosshairs too. Margaret Thatcher had no interest in sports, and she loathed football. Such was the Conservative attitude at the time that the national game was seen as a law and order issue. The appalling scenes at Kenilworth Road, and those around the country, gave credence to this attitude. For all the non-violent, non-idiotic fans, the hooligan faction simply continued to grow and destroy. In 1983, the Chester Report analysed the Football League's structure. As David Goldblatt writes in The Game of Our Lives, the Chester Report opted for a form of rationally managed decline, a defeatist but humane social demographic restructuring. In short, this meant great...
And instead, they just did that to the working class as a whole instead. It was fine. Yeah. And it worked really well.
Greater professionalism from the clubs, a greater focus on commercialism, a more comfortable fan experience, and a smaller top division and league pyramid as a whole, under which the lower tiers would be regionalised. Tragic incidents to follow in May 1985 would propel the issue further, but around 2 weeks after the Luton riot, Thatcher met with FA and Football League officials in Downing Street. She presented a 6-point plan to regain control of a situation that had been allowed to spiral. Her proposals included more CCTV, an ID card scheme that would vet fans and ban convicted hooligans, and better fencing around pitches. Later in the month, Chelsea chairman Ken Bates would take the latter to an extreme by installing electric fences at Stamford Bridge in a desperate attempt to curb the hooligan element. Despite the headlines, Bates soon had the fences dismantled, as the local council refused him permission to turn them on.
Yeah.
More a list of demands than recommendations, Thatcher was now insisting...
No, we're not going to allow you to fry our local residents because they went to a football game, you stupid cunt.
Football clubs tackle the problem head on, something that she believed they had shirked for too long. Clubs had 6 weeks to get their houses in order. By the end of May, however, the landscape had irreversibly changed.
That was her with Jimmy Savile there. That's Margaret Thatcher with her good friend Jimmy Savile. Just saying.
By the end of May, however, the landscape had irreversibly changed. On Saturday, the 11th of May, 1985, two tragic incidents took place that resulted in the completely avoidable loss of life of match-going football fans. It was the final day of the season. In Division 2, Birmingham hosted Leeds United at St Andrews. Both clubs had notorious hooligan followings, so it didn't take long for trouble to flare up. A toxic atmosphere bubbled along throughout the game, occasionally boiling over. At the final whistle, Birmingham fans invaded the pitch, trying, but ultimately failing, to reach the Leeds fans. Later in the year, the Popplewell Committee investigation into crowd safety at sports grounds described the scenes at St Andrews as more like the Battle of Agincourt than a football match. The crowds ripped down fences, tore out seats, threw missiles, and set fire to a refreshment bar. Only charges by police horses kept the fans apart, preventing a full-scale riot. A police officer on the day, Detective Chief Superintendent Mick Treble, described it as the most terrifying experience I had in my police career. The intensity, the anger, the violence shown by Leeds fans was something else. Ian Hambridge was a 15-year-old boy attending his first football game with school friends. During the chaos, he was separated from the group. It is believed that Ian sought shelter away from the trouble. However, as a result of the sickening scenes, a 12-foot wall collapsed and landed on Ian, inflicting fatal head injuries. He died in hospital the following day. That same afternoon...
There's still bad blood between us as well. Birmingham and Leeds games are fucking horrible. Atmosphere is always awful.
130 miles north, Bradford welcomed Lincoln to Valley Parade.
But no one talks about that because what happened on the same day at the same time was way worse.
Before the game, again the final of the season, Bradford City were presented with the 3rd Division Championship trophy. With promotion secured, there was a party atmosphere in the air. At around 3:40, 5 minutes before half-time, a fire broke out beneath the main stand. The antiquated structure primarily consisted of timber, and the roof was asphalt-covered tarpaulin, designed to make the stand rainproof, although such qualities were a distant memory. As Paul Firth recalled in 4 Minutes to Hell, the story of the Bradford City fire, most summers another patch or two was added to the different shades of asphalt, making it a patchwork of repairs that never truly fixed the problem. In fact, the stand stood in a remarkably similar state as the one erected way back in 1908, 4 years before the Titanic sunk. The stand was unusual in many ways too. First, it was built into a valley, meaning the pitch was considerably lower than the level of the street outside. As a result, there was a cavity beneath the wooden terraces and seating areas. Over the years, a significant amount of rubbish had accumulated in the cavity, in part due to the gaps in the floorboards above. Some estimates claim the litter had gathered for over half a century. However, in his book, 56, The Story of the Bradford Fire, Martin Fletcher states that groundsman Alan Gilliver also told the inquiry there wasn't as much rubbish as everyone makes out there was, and that it had been removed during pre-season repairs. Second, the seating and standing arrangements inside the stand were odd and confusing. The stand had 3 sections, which Paul Firth described as follows. Upper rows of wooden seats on wooden floorboards. The lower rows, which by 1985 were plastic seats with metal supports set in concrete. And, lastly, the standing areas. The aisles and their downward steps could confuse the occasional and unwary visitor. Without telling you which was which, some of the aisles only went halfway down the rows of seats, and this was a source of frustration for those trying to find a seat in the lower section. What's more, the stand was designed to try and keep passage between these sections to a minimum, or impossible. A wooden wall around 4 feet high separated the upper seating area from the lower seating section and had only 2 openings for fans to pass through. At the front of the lower seating area, there was a drop of about 5 feet down to the standing area, the paddock, and, as Firth notes, was not intended to be negotiated by spectators in either direction. Then, at the front of the paddock, the lower walkway was below pitch level by a couple of feet. Thus, the pitch side wall, which looked barely 3 or 4 feet high when seen from the far side of the pitch, was something like 5 feet high for anyone standing at the front of the paddock. In less than 4 minutes, the wisps of grey smoke first seen at 3:40 had become a ferocious fire that engulfed the wooden structure, killing 56 people and injuring at least 265 more.
Jesus.
The club had...
And there's a couple of really, really grim extra details here. Firstly, not all of the people died in the actual stand. Many of them tried to get out and the doors were locked for some fucking reason, so they literally couldn't leave, and so they died like essentially in the tunnels at the back. And then secondly, and this is a really grim thing, health and safety legislation has come a long way since then, because one of the fire escapes in the stand led onto the roof of the stand from which they were trying to escape. Literally, and that was allowed. That was a perfectly legal thing to do. The fire escape led to the roof of the building that was on fire. So people essentially cooked. Now, they'd have been dead, right? But the smoke inhalation is what always gets you in a fire. Very, very rarely does anyone burn to death. They die of a smoke inhalation. But their corpses on the roof of that stand would have cooked and then fallen through, and their charred corpses smashed on the concrete below. Imagine having to deal with that as like a healthcare worker turning up to that, or a firefighter having to turn up and deal with that scene. Like genuinely like something from hell. Mad shit. God almighty, what a grim situation. Oh, John the Brazen, you're from Bradford, are you? Okay. Had to hire staff members to write an exam paper for them. Jesus Christ. That's fucked, man. Yeah, a lot of people got burns and stuff from like the melting roof pouring onto them. Molten tar. Evil shit, man.
Had been due to redevelop the stand with concrete terracing and a steel roof 2 days later. In 1981 alone...
Yeah, that's literally true. 2 days later, the guy who was supposed to be doing the civil engineers bit to come and like restructure the stand literally turned up. Like he hadn't been informed. He didn't know, because like you got to bear in mind, pre-internet and stuff, like you don't necessarily always learn about what's going on in the world. And so he turns up looking to rebuild a stand and finds, oh, it's literally ashes. It's like it's a fucking mad shit.
The health and safety executive twice drew the club's attention to the fire risk. The county council did the same again in 1984, but the rubbish wasn't cleared, or at least not entirely. And even if some had been...
Just like Hillsborough, no one went to prison for this. 56 people burned to death, or died in a fire. No one was culpable. If you're rich enough, you can just kill people. It's just, you get away with it.
It was allowed to reaccumulate. According to the Popplewell inquiry, the fire was accidental, most likely caused by a discarded cigarette that fell through one of the gaps in the floorboards. It then ignited the rubbish beneath, and the subsequent blaze consumed everything. In an article in The Athletic, the coroner James Turnbull is quoted as saying that the fire went from one end to the other quicker than anybody could walk. For some reason, The Popplewell inquiry was a joint investigation into the events at St Andrews and Valley Parade, before later having its remit extended to include the Heysel disaster.
See, this is the thing. If anything, that we have gotten better as a society, because there's no way. Because how much of a callous cunt do you have to be as a prime minister to not even give each of those instances their own report? She just smushed them all in together. Fuck it. Unbelievable evil. You're not even going to do an inquiry for 3 separate instances of death. That wouldn't be tolerated now. You'd have to have... You'd have to have a separate inquiry for each of those things. You just would. Or at least an investigation, if not necessarily a public inquiry, etc., etc. Yeah. Helena's on too. I said they look a bit sad. But the movement is remorseless. What? What do you mean? What does that mean? I don't know.
Turnbull calls this political business, claiming it was designed to talk to the politicians about the dangers in football stadia, rather than truly getting to the root of the tragedies. The somewhat rushed inquiry resulted in new legislation. This included the banning of new wooden stands, the immediate closure of existing stands classed as unsafe, and the banning of smoking in wooden stands. We can only scratch the surface of the Bradford fire here. If you're watching this around release, we will have a dedicated video about the disaster coming soon. If you're coming to this later, be sure to check out that video after this. We will put the link in the description when it's live. Liverpool and Juventus contested the 1985 European Cup final at the Heysel Stadium in Brussels. What unfolded on that May evening was a hellish mix of hooliganism, stadium neglect, administrative failings, and incompetent policing.
What a surprise, the police are shit everywhere. Who'd have thunk it?
First, in assigning the final to Heysel, UEFA chose a crumbling, decrepit stadium for their showpiece occasion.
And I'm sure that had nothing to do with any money transferring into any accounts in Switzerland. I'm certain.
In fact, Liverpool chief executive Peter Robinson and Juventus president Gianpiero Boniperti had both requested that UEFA change the venue, foreseeing the potential for violence, if not the scale of the tragedy itself. UEFA rejected the requests, and it later transpired that their official inspection of Heysel lasted only 30 minutes.
You can't walk around a stadium in 30 minutes. What the fuck? What check did they do? What check did they do of an entire stadium in half an hour? Just goes to show you, like, for all of the corruption we put up with now with UEFA and FIFA, it was never any better. It's just there was less money in it. So people weren't stealing billions at the time, they were just stealing tens of thousands. I bet the motherfuckers who ran UEFA and FIFA then look at us now and like, this is the golden age of corruption. If you get one of these cushy seats with a vote about who hosts the World Cup, you're in for a fortune. It's a fucking license to print money.
In 1929 and 1930, Heysel was in a serious state of disrepair come the mid-1980s. The final was due to be the last football game played at the stadium before a huge renovation. But with this end in sight, investment in maintenance and repairs had become non-existent. Arsenal fans had already complained about Heysel's condition when their side played Valencia in the 1980 European Cup Winners' Cup final. By 1985, it was in a shocking...
a tournament they should bring back. I think the Cup Winners' Cup was a belting tournament. Straight knockout between clubs and teams that are specialists at winning cup knockout tournaments. Do that again. Not everything needs a group stage, you money-grabbing bastards.
date and entirely unfitting for a European Cup final involving two of Europe's superpowers. On the night of the game, ticketless fans were seen kicking holes in the outer wall made of breeze blocks to gain entry.
Yeah, that's not a great sign when you can physically kick your way into a stadium. It suggests the construction of that stadium is not entirely sound. That's not normal to be able to do that. That's why they build gates and everything. They build specifically gaps in the wall where you can go through that have like usually some sort of barrier in place so you can allow people with tickets in and not allow people who don't have tickets, you see? It's a very good system. But unfortunately this stadium, when should we just have holes? Just have people can make holes in the stadium and then burrow in like rats or something. The Anglo-Italian Cup was the shit. I remember going to see, oh God, was it Bologna or Bari or some shit in the Anglo-Italia Cup at St Andrews? Fucking mental tournament. She just said Kevin Logan. What? Who said Kevin Logan? What are you talking about? Who's she? Why keep my name out of your mouth, whoever you are. Unless I like you, in which case that's fine.
After the game and subsequent tragedy, the Deputy Chief of the London Fire Brigade, Jerry Clarkson, investigated the stadium. He said that Hazel's condition was beyond belief and that the deaths that night were attributable very, very largely to the appalling state of the stadium. Leading Belgian architect Joseph Ange was ordered to survey...
Ange? That's not a name. That's someone mispronouncing orange. That's a posh person trying to say orange. Ange.
The disaster scene too. He noted, areas for standing room remain as they were at the time of their construction in 1930.
Oh, Helena said... Oh, okay, well, hello, Helena.
They are in an advanced state of decay. Only the handrest remains on most of the handrails. Most are unusable, and several on the point of collapse. The handrails were quickly and easily destroyed by the pressure of the crowds, which had no proper means of escape. Concrete terracing was eroded, and crucially, neither the barrier between blocks Y and Z nor the wall in block Z were strong enough to resist crowd pressure. An added layer of context is the events in the previous year's European Cup final. In 1984, Liverpool played Roma at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome. Following their victory in the Italian capital, many Liverpool fans were attacked trying to exit the stadium and in the city, with the local police taking a relaxed approach. Only a year later, the Liverpool fans, many of whom had exploited an unenforced ban on the sale of alcohol around the stadium, carried a lingering hostility that was easy to turn on another set of Italian opponents. Inside the stadium, Juventus's official fan following was allocated blocks O, N and M behind one goal. Behind the other, Liverpool's fans had blocks Y and X. Block Z was part of the neutral allocation. This meant that anyone in Brussels, a city with a large Italian population, could buy tickets for this section. Ultimately, many Juventus fans were able to get their hands on these tickets. However, because this wasn't the club's official following, most of these people were far from the hardcore. The only barrier separating blocks Y and Z was chicken wire fencing and...
Yeah, I tell you what's really good, what's a great idea, is just separating fans with 3 police officers and the flimsiest looking fence you've ever seen in your life. How could that possibly have ever gone wrong? Who saw this as an issue?
And, initially, a handful of poorly trained police officers. The Popplewell report acknowledged that...
Aren't all police officers poorly trained police officers? Show me the good trained police officers. I've yet to meet any of them.
As kickoff approached, Juventus fans at their end of the stadium were involved in some clashes with the police. In his book, From Where I Was Standing, Chris Rowland notes, This incident spurred the Liverpool fans at the other end to fire flares and throw stones into the mostly Italian-occupied Block Z. A back and forth continued between Blocks Y and Z, ratcheting tensions. Many of the missiles and weapons used were rocks and poles offered up by the shambolic stadium. Then, as noted by the Popplewell report, between 7:15 p.m. and 7:30 p.m, English fans charged Block Z. There were 3 charges. The third resulted in the Italian supporters in Block Z, who were seeking to escape, being squashed and suffocated. Charges were common among English hooligans and weren't necessarily an instigation of outright fighting. It was part of the tribal, some might say childish, concept of taking your opponent's end.
Well, it is sort of animalistic. I wouldn't say it's even childish. I'd say it was sort of like animalistic territory warfare. Yeah, the charging wasn't so much about getting to and physically injuring people. If they ran away, that was fine. You got to take their territory, like monkeys or whatever, like charging other monkeys to get rid of them so that you can take their territory. It's that. It's an animalistic fucking thing, which is essentially what hooliganism is at its core. It's that battle. It's that warrior bullshit inside people, which most people deal with in constructive ways, but some people are wankers, you know.
With this in mind, the typical English football fan carried a fearsome reputation. For these casual fans and genuine neutrals in Block Z, the sight of the Liverpool fans breaking through the fence and running toward them was terrifying. In Fever Pitch, Nick Hornby writes, "In the end, the surprise was that these deaths were caused by something as innocuous as running, the practice that half the juvenile fans in the country indulge in, and which was intended to do nothing more than frighten the opposition and amuse the runners. The Juventus fans, many of them chic, middle-class men and women, weren't to know that though, and why should they have done? For those looking to flee, an escape route wasn't
I'm not sure how I
immediately
feel about
obvious.
Hornby, to be
A
honest.
barrier blocked escape onto the pitchside area, so the mass moved toward the back of the stand. People started climbing a wall in their attempts to find safety.
How do you all pronounce names that begin with Z? Well, Z. It's going to Z sound. So like Zinchenko or Xerxes. Those are 2 footballers.
The pressure built. This wall collapsed. By the end of it all, 39 people lost their lives in the stampede or suffocating under bodies. The victims included 32 Italian.
Fucking wall collapsed and people fucking died, man. That's wild. It's a fucking football game, yo.
4 Belgians, 2 French, and 1 from Northern Ireland.
Yeah, another one.
Over 600 people were injured. The accusations and punishments were almost immediate. The very next day, Günther Schneider, a UEFA official...
That could not be a more German name if I've ever heard it. Günther Schneider. Actually, that could be Dutch, I suppose. I don't know. Either way, it is very Germanic. Günther Schneider
said only the English fans were responsible. Of that,
oh no, there isn't a silly J halfway through the word. That is German. Yeah.
There is no doubt. Margaret Thatcher echoed Schneider's statement, saying, "There are no words. There are no
Oh, Schneidy cunt. Okay, cool.
possible justifications. The blame is entirely for England." It wasn't a surprise.
What, for all of England? What happened to personal responsibility, bitch? Did all of England go to fucking Brussels? No. Some dickheads did. And lots of cool Liverpool fans who didn't do shit. But that's regardless, some dickheads did.
And on the 31st of May, 2 days after the tragedy,
Holger
Margaret Thatcher
Badstuber
asked the FA to withdraw...
A simple one. Torsten Frings. Oh, love it. Arne Friedrich. Bastian Schweinsteiger. I do love a good German name. I do.
Or English clubs from all European club competitions.
Everton did get royally fucked by the ban. Actually, English football in general got fucked because English football was at the height of its fucking powers, man. English football was dominating Europe. We'd won the European... Well, the English clubs had won the European trophy, the European Cup, like 5 out of the last 7 years or something. And Everton won the league, and the English clubs were banned. Get wrecked.
Her request preempted UEFA's actions. On the 2nd of June, they ratified the ban, eventually excluding all English clubs from UEFA competitions for 5 years.
Like, how is
with
that
Liverpool
remotely
banned for
fair, by the way?
6,
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. Look, but how is that fair to anyone else? Everton didn't do shit. No one else did anything. This was Liverpool fans. What is this collective punishment bullshit? And interestingly, that's never been applied to anywhere else. When the Italians regularly knife each other up at the games, Italian clubs aren't fucking banned from anything, are they? The Turkish fans are mental. How often does anyone go to fucking Istanbul and there's always trouble? Someone always dies. Someone always gets their fucking head caved in or stabbed up. And the Turkish clubs are just allowed, that's fine. No, that's great, go for it.
Despite the culpability of Liverpool fans in the tragedy, the Football League's secretary, Graham Kelly, was furious at the idea of a blanket ban on English clubs.
Yeah, it's mental.
He knew that the English...
Also, how much of a cunt have you got to be Prime Minister and call for that shit? What a fucking prick she was, honest to God.
...game would fall behind, and reclaiming a place in the European Games elite would be a long and arduous process. There was a sense that Thatcher seized an opportunity to put the game in its place once and for all.
Yeah, yet another working class institution destroyed by this fucking evil bitch. Yeah, what a surprise.
She hadn't received any briefing from anyone on the ground at Heysel before asking the FA to withdraw English clubs from Europe. Her request was part of a renewed push.
Also, by the way, that game shouldn't have happened that day. Like, I know it's not really the story. Some people fucking died, and that's rough. But that game shouldn't have happened. Just on a moral level, people died. What the fuck? And secondly, the referee literally admitted that he wasn't going to give Liverpool a penalty. So it wasn't being refereed as a game of football. It was a show. It was a staged performance. And that goes down in the history books. Juventus get a sympathy European Cup? What?
For a cleansing of the sport, including forcing football fans to carry ID cards. We have to get the game cleaned up from this hooliganism at home, she said, and then perhaps we shall be able to go overseas again. At the end of an 18-month investigation, Belgian judge Marina Kopieters ultimately concluded that the English fans were culpable. However, she said that the blame should be shared with Belgian police and football authorities. 26 English nationals were charged with involuntary manslaughter. 14 of these were convicted and given 3-year sentences, half of which were suspended for 5 years. During the same trial, 3 Belgians...
So a slap on the wrist. I mean, at least someone did go to jail, I guess. That is better than anything that happened in England. None of the tragedies you heard about, not even Hillsborough 4 years later, led to any convictions. Ever.
Also faced charges of involuntary manslaughter for their role in the disaster. Albert Roosens, the head of the Belgian Football Association, for allowing tickets at the Liverpool end of the stadium to be sold to Juventus fans, and 2 police chiefs, Michel Kensier and Johan Meyer, who were in charge of policing at the stadium that night. Roosens received a 6-month suspended sentence, while Meyer was handed 9 months. Kensier was acquitted. As with the Bradford fire...
So one police officer did go to jail at least, for a very small sentence. I suppose that's something. It doesn't feel like much, but it is something.
Planning a dedicated Heysel video in the coming months. So either keep an eye out for it, or find the link in the description below if you're watching this later. As the 1984-85 season concluded, English football was at rock bottom. The Football League's first ever sponsor, Canon, announced that they wouldn't extend their 3-year deal after the 1985-86 season. Presumably, they'd had enough. But even before the tragedies that blighted the end of the season, the Football League, BBC and ITV were struggling to come to terms on a deal for broadcasting live games on TV. In February, the Football League turned down a joint BBC and ITV bid for the broadcasting rights. The offer on the table was worth just £19 million over 4 seasons. In this pre-Premier League era, the money had to feed all 92 Football League clubs. Aside from the money, the main bone of contention was the number of matches to be screened. With stadium attendances still at comparative lows, the clubs insisted on a maximum of 13 games, with only 10 in the league, along with the semi-finals and final of the League Cup. A deal for the FA Cup would be signed separately. The standoff led to Jonathan Martin, the head of sport at the BBC, saying, "Football rates itself far too highly. It has no God-given right to be on television." Another key factor in all this was the perilous financial state of many Football League clubs. It was reported that 36 of the 92 clubs were in debt. The clubs then needed to strike the perfect sweet spot. Squeeze the broadcasters for the maximum amount, but don't risk them walking away without a deal. A June deadline came and went. This was now a post-Bradford, post-Haysel world. English football's worth had never been so low.
Exactly, that's the point. You're trying to negotiate when your product is in the shitter.
Put bluntly, it was not a marketable product. So, when the 1985-86 season kicked off on the 17th of August, there was a TV blackout. Unless you went to a stadium to watch a game, you simply couldn't see any football, including highlights. Frank McAvenny's arrival at West Ham from St Mirren is the perfect example of how great the lack of exposure was. The Scottish striker struck 18 goals before Christmas 1985, yet he
Which is mental, by the way.
remained a mostly unknown entity outside of Upton Park, and this theory was put to the test.
That's the stadium that doesn't exist I mentioned earlier.
Shown on St and Grevesy, Martin Tyler walked around central London with the country's leading goalscorer to see if anyone recognised him. Only a taxi driver and, remarkably, a passing Billy Connolly knew who McAvenny...
Billy That's lovely. I love those random little things. Randomly a passing Billy Connolly. Oops, shit. What have I done there? Yeah. What did I do? Something crashed. I can't see what. Nothing seems to be spilling, so I think I'm okay. Oh. We're nearly done now, chat.
He was. In October 1985, with the standoff setting, the Big Five, Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, Everton and Tottenham, held talks about forming a new domestic Super League. This included a new TV package.
Oh, I loved Ricky Otto. Ricky Otto was the shit. By which I mean he was shit at football. But he played at the Blues, and I got to see him get an assist at Wembley for the first ever golden goal in extra time in English football. It was Ricky Otto. Otherwise an absolutely fucking useless footballer.
That remunerated them more handsomely as the biggest draws. The broadcasters suddenly had their own compulsion to swiftly...
You know, Birmingham City, we still have the record for the most amount of players used in one season. I forget how many it is. It's 50 odd, I think. Barry Fry would just bring in players and get rid of them. This was transfer window and all that shite. He was, you know... You'd turn up to a game and there'd be a new bloke there and no one knew who the fuck he was, and then he'd be gone 2 weeks later, so you wouldn't see him again. Fucking useless, man.
Resolve the blackout. Unsurprisingly, all parties eventually found a breakthrough in negotiations. The BBC and ITV would pay a paltry £1.3 million to show 6 live league games and 3 League Cup games for the remainder of the season. A deal for 4 FA Cup games was agreed too. Everton chairman Philip Carter said, "We believe that putting the game back on the screens will stimulate interest rather than kill it. We are anxious the more positive side of football is shown, and television is the vehicle to do that." His words are telling. When public opinion of football was at its lowest, disappearing from television was an existential threat. On Saturday, the 4th of January 1980...
It really could have been. If they had just stopped showing it, no one would have known about it and it would have just drifted into complete insignificance.
Fans could sit down to watch Portsmouth versus Aston Villa and Grimsby versus Arsenal on The Big Match. The following day, live football returned, with Charlton versus West Ham in the FA Cup. BBC commentator John Motson recalled that when Frank McAvenny finally appeared on the screen, he said, "Now you know what he looks like." The status quo may have been restored, but the seeds of the Premier League and its subscription-based TV model had been planted. By the year's end, green shoots of recovery were visible, but it would be years yet until they bore fruit. The eradication of hooliganism was still far off. Given that the European ban only applied to club competitions, there were still violent disturbances at international level with the England national team, particularly at Euro 88 in Germany. While the state...
Yeah, because that's the thing, the clubs were banned from Europe, but the English national team still played abroad, so all of the hooligans just massed and went as one group to foreign countries and still made us look shit. Brilliant, thanks. Really solved the problem there, lads.
Stadium legislation brought in after the Bradford fire was welcome. It was still woefully short. Stadiums continued to decline, and policing practices and attitudes towards football fans remained unchanged. This would ultimately come to a head in 1989, resulting in the death of 97 Liverpool fans at Hillsborough, in English football's worst and another completely avoidable tragedy. 1985 was...
What's this? Oh, a bit of Saints and Greaves.
Got its finger on the pulse of the modern game.
So, Jimmy, I would say that the big football news of this week can be summed up in 2 words. Ricky and, of course, Otto.
Absolutely, so I mean, who would have thought that a man the tabloids call Ricky Otto would move down to the 3rd division?
2nd division.
Oh, yeah.
He was playing in the 1st division.
Yeah.
First as in top, elite, creme de la creme, and more importantly, the division which we cover live and exclusive here on that which we choose to call ITV.
Yeah, because I thought, you know, that a player of his class might have moved up to the,
Where? Where could he move up to?
Scotland. You know, he might have gone to Rangers, because Rangers, they play in the,
Rain.
Yeah.
Play in the rain sometimes, you know, when it rains.
Yeah, sometimes.
That's probably why he didn't go up there then.
Comedy was different, man. Times were different. God, that bit aged really poorly. Oh, God, that was shit.
Such a bleak year, the result of such prolonged neglect, that it would take considerable time for the darkness it created to clear. In its isolation, England became something of a footballing backwater. It wasn't until the turn of the new decade that the light finally broke through again. The game it revealed was resolved to transform. it would never be the same again.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone, I'll put the link to the channel. Not just about football. A very good up-and-coming channel, and I hope they make lots more content. It's better than your usual slop. Is what I would advertise it as, I suppose. Anyway, I'm going to fuck off for the night. Oh! Look at my hair. Look at that. It's like Dumb and Dumber. Anyway. Oh. Who should we go over to? Let's have a look. Oh. I'll be back. Well, it's gone midnight, so I'll probably be back tonight, I imagine. Who's going on YouTube's? Oh, no, Justice is still going, so I'll send you over there. And, well, the same again, I suppose. Yes. Go and say hello to No Justice, who is awesome, and that. Oh, what a roller coaster! What a roller coaster, chat. Thank you all for listening and watching. Yeah, hopefully the British government do the right thing eventually. I live in hope more than expectation. Hopefully, Mad Cat, yeah, hopefully. But who knows? One cannot say so. Thank you all for listening and watching. No pass around.